I don't think they're ready, Nicole.
They didn't look ready to me.
Chat, are you ready? Let's see chat. Let's see if chat's ready. We are? What you are? Yes? Could be more ready.
Could be more ready.
Could be more ready.
I want to see some nodders.
Oh no, please don't do nodders. Please don't do nodders, no.
Oh no.
Okay, I think chat's ready.
Yeah.
All right, chatters. Welcome, chat. Hi, everyone. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Hi.
Hi.
Hey.
Right, so who wants to start then? Sophie or I don't know.
Yeah.
Hey, what's the show about, guys? What are we doing? What's going on?
I don't know. Actually, I didn't do any research.
Oh shit!
Yeah,
Oh, no.
nah.
Well, how about we go around and introduce ourselves? I'm sure everyone here.
That's a better.
I'm sure chat knows a lot about all of us. But how about before we introduce what this whole thing is about? Let's introduce ourselves. I'm sure everyone here probably knows me, but in case you're here from like maybe Sophie's or Conquest of Dread, Sophie's, DJ Mule's Twitter or their streams or whatever. My name is Bad Bunny. I'm a political streamer. We talk about all sorts of hard-hitting issues here on my channel. And yeah, I'm a communist. I am a feminist. I'm all the things. And I'm really excited to be here today to talk to all of you. And I'm sure all the chatters still know me. And it's nice to see you. Hi, chatters. But if anyone here is new, welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm very, very glad you're here. So how about whoever wants to go next can go next.
Okay. My name is DJ Mule. I'm also a political streamer on Twitch. Yeah, I'm a communist. I'm an anarchist. Same as Bunny, basically. Very, very similar. That's why we're all here, really. We're all pretty much the same, sort of ideologically.
Echo chamber.
Yeah. That's right.
Where can we find you?
Right.
It's twitch.tv/DJ Mule.
Oh, yeah. You could get me on Twitter at DJ Mule, just same as it's spelled underneath my my webcam here. And you can get me on Twitch there as well. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
The same name.
Cool. I'm Sophie. I go by Sophie from Mars online on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Patreon. Patreon's the important one because that's where I pay my rent. It's patreon.com/Sophie from Mars. I make media analysis, YouTube essays, and I've got podcasts and shit. I'm a whole multimedia franchise at this point, but honestly, the thing I'm most excited to be doing is this show right now. So, like, check me out wherever, Sophie from Mars. I'm going to be doing something that is pretty related to this, called Organizing Interviews, starting this month on my channel. If you want to see that, it's like a series where I interview organizers and activists around the world and talk to them about what they do, how you can do it as well. I actually have an interview with a mutual friend with Tim, who's incredibly based, the best interview in the lot, actually. I'm really looking forward to releasing that one. Yeah, Sophie from Mars, just wherever.
Yay!
Cool. And I'm Tim. Conquest of Dread on YouTube and Twitch, but Dread Conquest on Twitter if you want to look me up there. Yeah, I'm a communist also. I'm from down in New Zealand, or Aotearoa as we call it. What else?
We should say where we're from, by the way. That's a good detail because I think it's important that we note that, like, this isn't just a bunch of like Yankees, bunch of filthy Yanks coming together.
Well, we do all sound like a bunch of Yankees, so there is people would have assumed.
Yeah. Well, so I'm from New Zealand, Aotearoa. I'm member of the proud Ngāpuhi Nation, the Everlasting House, and I'm here to talk communism. That's what I'm doing. I don't know what y'all are doing. So where are the rest of you from then?
Yeah, so I'm from America. I'm from Seattle, and grew up in Chicago, but now I live on the West Coast, and I think I'm going to move back to Chicago soon. Yeah,
cool.
Back to the extraordinarily bad winters. I'm not looking forward to it. And then what about you? I don't know if anyone could tell where DJ Mule and Sophie are from. I don't know if anyone has any guesses.
Well, I mean, I technically live within the jurisdiction of the United Kingdom, but I'm transgender, so I don't actually count as one of those, you know. So it actually disqualifies me from British life.
Normal island
You live on Turf
citizenship.
Island, is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly.
I see.
Trying to get out as soon as possible. We're working on it.
Yeah, it sucks. Yeah, it sucks here. Yeah, I'm from the same place. Yeah. Just a bit more north than Sophie, but there's not really. Whenever you say that to Americans, they're just like, "What? That's like a car drive. That's just like popping out to see your mates." But it's actually well far.
I think chat is really upset that Soph isn't actually from Mars.
I didn't say I wasn't from Mars.
Oh yeah,
I said I
You're not there
currently
right
live
now.
within the United Kingdom.
See?
Yeah.
The red planet.
And I didn't say I was a communist, and that's because Lorcan in chat is right. I'm a Bogdanovist, which is a niche literary reference of someone. Anyway.
Any Posadas in the chat?
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Yeah, no, actually, that's me. Yeah, I want to blow up the whole world. I think that's the way.
Dolphins
That's the
rise
way
up.
That's the way forward.
So,
I love dolphins.
So chat, it's chatty. If you have any questions throughout this, by the way, this is like not going to be as casual as my streams. My streams, if anyone's been able to catch them, are extraordinarily casual. Like I show up in my robe and I'm like waking up as the stream occurs, and it's extraordinarily laid back and it's very, very interactive. This is going to be a little less so I'm not going to be able to answer, or I'm not going to be able to acknowledge your donations and stuff at the like as soon as they happen, like I normally do. Please, no groovering, chat. Text-to-speech is off anyways. You can't do it. Behave yourself. But I'll be thanking you for all the stuff, like in batches. And if you want to like ask us any questions, or whatever, please do so in the chat. But like if we don't get to it right away, or if there's not as much attention as you would like, guess what? All of us also do our own streams. You can bother all of us individually as much as your little heart desires. But yeah, you're not going to be getting as much hand holding, like mommy time that I think a lot of you are looking for. Because let's face this is Twitch chat. No offense, Twitchers.
Poor chat.
No offense, chatters.
Oh.
Okay, so should we dive into our topic right now?
Yeah. Well, yeah, we're here to introduce the show. Should we introduce the show? Let's
do it.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what it's all about. Yeah. It's I mean, I guess we're mainly just wanting to communicate that capitalism has completely failed, communism is inevitable, and instead of sort of just sat there eating the doom pill, worrying about how bad things are, we just kind of have to change the conversation now to how it's going to happen, to how things are going to change, how things are already changing, how things are going to change.
Yeah, basically, I think we are what's brought us together here. Like we do have personal and ideological differences, and I think across the online left, people have personal and ideological differences. But like one of the biggest divisions that we see in leftists at the moment is people who think that everything's just fucked and it's just no hope, versus people who think that we can do something. And all of us think that we can do something, and we'd like to talk to you all about what can be done. Unfortunately, it's a really complicated issue, and so we're not going to do that all this week. Like it takes a lot longer than that, right? So we're gonna this week introduce the show and give the general battle plan, like what's it going to look like in the coming weeks, and then week by week we'll focus on different things, because an important side to this is that social media really has you feeling like you should do everything. Like you're on your Twitter feed and you can see that people in prisons are being treated like shit, and there are wildfires, and there's an oil spill on fire in the ocean, and it looks like a CGI scene from a movie and shit like this, right? And you're just like, I have to care about all of these things, but I can't do anything about any of them. And one of the most important things that we're going to be doing, I think, going forward, is that week by week, we're going to focus on different topics. We will revisit them proportionally to how much they need talking about, proportionally to how much we want to focus people's attention on them. And like, pick one. Hey, chatters, pick one, get fucking stuck in. Just go for it. Like, you don't have to just be a little bit into everything anymore. You put your effort into something, and if everyone puts their effort into something, we'll be changing something, right?
I want to.
I think
Oh, go ahead, please.
You go for it. I was gonna say, yeah, with like, what we see on Twitter with all these big things happening, I think that a lot of people think that there's like, I guess like the path to communism is about like, like just some big like revolutionary moment or something like that where it's just
Yeah.
like, okay, it's D-Day or something like that. But
Right.
there's so many little things that people can be working, and there's things like it's not just like these things are already happening around us, right? There's like strikes, there's like people like organizing like mutual aid, all these things, like it's already happening. But yeah, like our whole thing is that there's not many people on the online left that are really talking about that at this point. Like a lot of people are really, transfixed with like other forms of, I guess, like kind of like leftist entertainment, whether it's like the internet blood sports or, things like that, which,
Right.
like I think, like we can understand the appeal. It's like people getting really heated and it feels like you're part of something or whatever. But yeah, but we're gonna focus
Yeah.
more on like actual like things that you can just go out and either like do or like even join up with people in your community that are already doing stuff, things like that. And because yeah, it's like there's this huge journey in front of us, and we kind of got to start taking these steps.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something I'll also touch on in like our relationship to social media is something I'm going to touch on in something I'm writing at the moment, which will come out later this year, called Cyberpunk 2022, a direction for the online left. It's all about what we can all be doing specifically as people who are online. Like we're all losers who are really addicted to politics online. Not everyone has the brainworms that we have, so we should acknowledge that and like organize as a group. And that's something I'll be writing. So again, if people don't know me, like that's something that is coming up later for me. But something I wanted to touch on, I've got a couple of book recommendations here, and one of the most important ones is Climate Leviathan by Joel Wainwright and Geoff Mann. And one of the things that we should maybe start talking about, like to launch into a bit of our like roundtable and discussion today, is something that the book touches on really well. Again, that's called Climate Leviathan by Joel Wainwright and Geoff Mann, and it talks about basically what the world is going to look like in the coming years, depending on a few different variables. And one of the most important variables is how much we all work together and what we can do to change things. But the overlaying thing is that there is collapse going on, right? We can see it all around us. Like there are food shortages, there are problems with the global supply chain, capitalism. This is the thing. Capitalism has failed. We talk online in way too much of a binaristic way, as if like, if capitalism is still happening, it can't have failed. But it's like, look around you, it's failed. Like literally look around you, it's failed. All that remains for us to do now is organize and fight, and we're going to have our own new system, the one that we built. Yeah, so one of the things that the book communicates really well is that a lot of people think that a lot of people have been so deeply entrenched in the ideology of state control and the belief that the state is going to take care of us, that people look at climate change and they think that the state is failing to manage it. Like the state would stop climate change, but it's failing at its job.
Right.
It's not, right? We all get this. It's not, it's doing its job exactly right. And it has to be opposed because what it is doing, like the job the state is doing is climate change.
Yeah.
And it's going to need to be opposed. And I think that's one of the most important frameworks here to think about and maybe launch into this discussion is like like collapse. Robert Evans calls it like the crumbles, because it's not like it's just one big, like Tim said, like things don't happen in these big kind of singular moments, but rather things are getting like harder to get, and like networks are falling apart and shit like this. It's crumbles rather than just like. And
but it's like, as an outsider, it might appear that, like even looking at things like the Russian Revolution, you might, like if you were to read like a really brief history book, like the kind you might get in high school or something like that, you'd think like, oh, it's just like one day the workers just got fed up. But it's like, no, it was like this very long protracted thing beforehand. And if we're going to be realistic, that's what it takes.
Yeah, totally.
One thing, Sophie, that's you really helped me with is I remember one time, I think we were having a conversation like off stream maybe, and you were talking about how when people say that capitalism wants this to happen, capitalism wants it to happen, that wasn't the correct framing. That although it's kind of getting there, but it's not quite. You said it's because capitalism isn't a person. It's like it's like a bacteria or something.
I think this is a really interesting thing. I kind of had a big brain moment about this where I kind of realized that like we should be understanding systems as a thing without center, mind, or memory, because that's what they are. And I likened it to the spread of a virus, or like, you know, and through the lens of pathology and epidemiology. And then I found out that you studied epidemiology, and I was like, oh shit, fucking incredible divine provenance in my comrades, like meant to be, right?
Yeah. So Chad, if you didn't know, I'm a epidemiologist. Like I'm a published scientist in epidemiology. I quit that because I was getting really disenamored for a number of reasons. And now that I see that what it's turned into is, you know, like the CDC deciding to bend their COVID quarantine amount of time that they recommend that people like are quarantined for COVID, depending on what Delta is like requested to increase their sales or something. Like this isn't a huge surprise to me. And so it's kind of the vibe, one of the vibes, kind of a vibe that I got out of it earlier, which is why I bailed. And so it's really interesting to see it get to this point. But anyways, so that's a side note. But yeah, it was really cool that you're interested in epidemiology. You describe the stuff through like epidemiologically. It's cool.
I think that it's a perfect example you've brought up, actually. So let's talk about the CDC for a second. This point that I'm trying to make is, and that I've made to you before, I think it actually was on stream, but it wasn't, maybe we just didn't get enough time to discuss it out properly, is that all systems are not like conscious beings. They're not like thinking, dreaming, living things that have like agency. And a lot of the time we imagine them as if they are. And that thinking, I think, is part of what paralyzes us. I do think that we imagine like capitalism does this thing to you, and it does this thing to you, and it does this thing to you. And it's like, well, if that's the case, then I'm fucked. Like this malicious thing is like getting me all the time. But the thing is, like, even really hierarchical systems like capitalism, or like a monarchy, even like an empire, right, where you have a person at the top nominally, like they still don't work like that, right? Like we live in the American empire. We aren't at the beck and call and whims of Joe Biden directly. Like we're not actually like, all the things and effects of the system aren't just like things Joe Biden wants, right? Actually, like what we end up saying is that they're things that like capital wants or whatever. But like it might seem like splitting hairs, but it's not. Like it's not things that capital wants, it's things that benefit capital. And capitalism is just this I've said it before, I'll say it again. It's a thing without center, mind, or memory. And we need to start talking about making our own thing without center, mind, or memory, because that's what human systems are. And so that's the thing that we're going to talk about today. I think probably touch on at least is mutual aid networks and how that evolves into dual power.
Yeah, fuck yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think there's something as well to be said about that you were saying, in that like, you know, there's like, you can relate to what you said in terms of like there being a huge inaccessibility to like theory and politics in general. Do you know what I mean? So people do get terrified and they kind of fill in the gaps with what they think capitalism is rather than what it actually is. It's just an idea, right? You know what I mean? It's totally like not this insurmountable, you can't comprehend it kind of thing. It's just simply an idea, right?
Yeah. Totally. We use colorful metaphors. Someone mentioned this in chat, the invisible hand of the marketplace, for example. Like we use anthropomorphizing metaphors to describe these systems, and they are useful to like simplify our thinking down, but we have to always remember that that's not actually how this stuff works. Actually, how this works is that like, the thing you can best liken it to is like a disease. It's like a brain worm. It's like a thing that's like controlling people's thinking because it's wriggled in their ear. And it's not doing that according to a plan. It's doing that according to a sort of set of relationships and needs and wants. Needs and requirements, but not wants or thoughts. That's kind of the central the central point, and that's part of what we
Yeah.
need to aspire towards, I guess.
Yeah. It's I mean it's like this same thing about kind of what you're saying about there is like a lack of political imagination, and there is, I mean, it's like the capitalist realism thing, like people
Right.
People will sooner like imagine that the world will just end, we'll all die in the climate apocalypse or whatever, than actually having the imagination to think outside of the current kind of capitalist hegemony sort of thing. And I think that's like that's something that we all talked about a lot. Kind of going into the stream, right? Yeah.
Yeah, Capitalist Realism, for those who aren't familiar, by Mark Fisher, is another great book recommend, but it's massively misinterpreted by a lot of leftists. So if this is niche for anyone in chat, like, and people aren't getting this, Mark Fisher was a really prominent Marxist academic. Unfortunately, he died by suicide. I actually know someone who was PhD supervised by him.
OBS.
Oh,
there we
I
go.
see us back.
Brilliant.
It's weird.
Cool.
We're back.
Right,
Right, where were we? You were
right,
on Mark
so-
Fisher.
Yeah, so for those who aren't familiar, Mark Fisher was a really, powerful Marxist academic, and one of the things that he wrote was called Capitalist Realism, and it's about a delusion that we all suffer from under liberal capitalism, where we can all acknowledge the problems. We can see them right in front of our eyes. We can see inequality. We can see climate change. We can see racialized policing and wealth inequality, and we can see all the effects and how they intersect and enforce and create, bigotries and systemic prejudices and so on. And we can see all of those things, and we're just like, can't do anything about it. And I think that like a lot of people read that and then go, damn, that's so true. He just like me for real. And they don't think, right, so if that's a delusion I'm suffering from, I should stop suffering from that delusion, right? And I think that's like, again, talking about this division, a lot of people do come away from this and they're like, yeah, it is just fucked. It just is fucked. Where it's meant to be an analysis of how people think it's just fucked, and to tell them that that's wrong. Right. A lot of people come away with it and they're just like, yeah, it's just really fucked. And the point is actually to understand that you need to expand your thinking. That's the opposite of what
it's supposed to be doing. It's supposed to display the absurdity of thinking it's an impossible situation and how that's a block. Yeah. And that's what we want to discuss today, right? Is expanding your imagination, being able to imagine a better world.
Yeah, like I've definitely been guilty of this in the past, where I've come up with sort of excuses to not do activism. Do you know
and that's part of it as well. And also, part of the kind of capitalist machinery is to allow space for like anti-capitalist kind of like media and things like this. Like I saw Alexia Clara, I think it is, in the chat mentioning things like that, and it's like there are these really toothless outlets that we are given to feel like we are kind of, like we're doing something special. We're doing our activism. We logged on, we did our activism for the day, and now we're logging off. So and that's something definitely to keep in mind. But maybe we'll talk about that stuff on another stream.
We definitely are going to do a targeted week where we talk about the black pill and we talk about doomerism, and we basically help anyone in chat who's kind of struggling with that really directly. But yeah, for now, we're talking about what the general plan looks like. I will say one closing note on that is that the book I already recommended, Climate Leviathan, and I have another recommend, which is called How to Blow Up a Pipeline by Andreas Malm. Both of those books touch on this doomerism and say that like they are huge problems in the left. But furthermore, don't just say like this is a huge problem because people are demotivated, because that sounds a little bit cynical. Like both of them, I think in very, very clear terms, point out how these are basically like false solutions. Like people in the imperial periphery or the global south or the third world, whichever term you are more familiar with, know the effects of climate change are real and happening and could be reversed by just like fucking doing something about it. And here, like a lot of people really comfortable in the imperial core are like, all this capitalism, what are we gonna do? There's nothing to do about it. And it's like it's so Joel Wainwright and Geoff Mann in Climate Leviathan call it a false solution, which seems strange, right? Like to call doomerism a solution, but it is like believing that we're all just going to die, and so we should just give up and go to sleep.
Right.
That is a kind of solution, but it's definitely a false one.
If everything that you believe is going to happen, then that's going to happen anyway, right? So
but I believe that a revolution is inevitable. Which is the thing I think we should state for the record here. I think everyone in chat understands that Twitch has terms of service, and before any hate watchers rush to try and get us, we aren't promoting or endorsing anything illegal on this stream. We will endorse and encourage people to engage in civil disobedience and legal actions against capitalism and against climate change. It is the official position of this show that people will be engaging in a lot of illegal actions against capitalism and against the systems that are killing our planet, and we will discuss those at length and talk to people, if we can, who have been involved with things like that in the past. But we don't endorse them, because we're not endorsing crime or criminal activity whatsoever.
I don't know what hate watchers are, so I'm just gonna take your word for it.
Okay.
I want to take this moment to thank, because a bunch of people have subbed and donated. I want to make sure we thank them. B-Rat, thanks for gifting us up to TN cookies. And by the way, chat, I'm going to try to do this much more quickly than I normally do. So Just Johnny, thanks for the 3 months. Thank you, Just Johnny. Gaunt Raindrop, thank you for the host. Michael McAllister, thank you for the 27 months. Thank you, Michael. Risk, thanks for giving a sub. To Snornat. Thank you.
Snornat is my partner, Nat.
Oh, hi, Nat. Yeah, cool. Okay. Infernal Silver, thanks for the host. Jamo, thank you for the 5 subs. Thank you, Jamo. Bun Clap Chat.
I'm your friend if you donate. That's the rule here.
Lotrick, thanks for gifting a sub to Sophie from Mars. And then One Man Pizza Party, thanks for the 200 bits. Risk, thank you for gifting a sub. Jerry Rose, thank you for the host. Mr. B, thank you for the 17 months. Jamo, thanks for gifting a sub to Vaxis Praxis. B-Rat, thanks for gifting a sub to Lodane. Oh, Lodane. Hi, Lodane. And what did we just get? TB Skyen, thank you for the 5 subs. Thank you. Bun Clap Chat. Thank you. And Goblin Hugger, thank you for the host. I appreciate it. Okay, so I think we can jump back in.
I think. I'm sorry, you didn't realize you had a thing.
No. I didn't know if you wanted to continue talking about what we're talking about.
Tell me your thing first.
Oh, I was just going to touch back on that feeling of doomerism, and that I wanted to reflect with chat to see if they had any of these feelings, because I feel like we haven't talked to chat in a while.
That sounds great.
Yeah, so chat, press 1 if, not including this conversation we're having, but press 1 if you felt like it's all over, there's nothing that can be done. Press 1 if that's you. I will say that I have felt this for a very long time. This project is helping me. Yeah, this project is helping me to not feel that way. Yeah.
Well, I want to say something about that, Nicole. That I know you felt that way, and I just want to say, I predicted that you being involved with this project would help you to feel differently about it. And I talked to you a little bit about the miracle of people working together, and how we'll definitely touch this more in the Black Pill Duma episode, but I think that people have this evaluation of the world where it's it's all hopeless, and it all seems completely rational, and there is logically no way out. But when people work together, it shocks you. It shocks you how much can suddenly get done. And that's why I was saying to you, I think you'll feel super different once we get into this a little bit. And I've seen it happen. I've seen it be happening for you already.
I will say that. I will say that after Bernie didn't win, that was me. I was just that's it. Especially with climate change, I'm this isn't something that we can just try again. It seems like we missed the boat.
Well, the thing about Bernie is that Bernie Sanders is a reformist, and we will have an episode about reforms and about non-reformist reforms, and why M for A would be a non-reformist reform, but he's still in electoral politics and invested in socialist reform.
Yeah.
And I think that some smart people have said when the state makes reform impossible, it makes revolution inevitable.
There
we go. Exactly.
I after Bernie lost, I made a video about just a little short one about stuff like that, about staying on target. And it's kind of the thing where it's you know, like, yeah, there are these like setbacks or whatever like that, or things that we, you know, might see as setbacks, but there's like, we have like a long-term goal. The long-term goal is like communism, you know, socialism, communism, whatever, and you want it, like, that's the goal, you know, like, it's a lot of people, I think Bernie was the goal, you know, and they were like, when it didn't happen or whatever, they were like, oh no, that's like the whole thing. But we really need to like, look at like, this is a down. We need to look downstream from that, focus on the end game, and then, you know, it's like these little things. It's like, yeah, okay, cool. You know, like, it might have been better if, you know, things panned out a different way or whatever like that. But we're still, you know, we're still working towards another thing. We're still on this. We're still on the track.
Well, I know a lot of people
to kind of like shine light on, you know, the things that you can do, because again, like, you know, we're all saying everybody's. I think a lot of people as well, when they first heard of, you know, people like Bernie, not just Bernie, but also like Jeremy Corbyn in this country, it's probably their first ever exposure to like a potential for like things getting better. So they've not even heard of things like that we know now, like dual power and mutual aid strikes and stuff like that. And you know, just having that like glimmer of hope and then having it disappear is obviously, and you're not going to see the other stuff obviously straight away that we just talked about, but again, that's our job. That's what we're here to do.
Exactly. They aren't going to show it to you because they have a capitalist interest. And, you know, mainstream media is invested in the capitalist system. It's never going to run against it, not meaningfully. We want a communist world, so we're going to tell you what should be happening and what is already happening. And that's, I think, is going to be a really important thing for Hope, is just showing people what's already being done. To move into discussion more, I have something for Tim, because we'd already touched on mutual aid and dual power, and you've made a video about dual power. And we're also going to be doing a whole episode that's focused on that. But you were just talking about like long-term plan, right? And that's, I think, what we want to brush over, like the real broad strokes today. So, you know, the power in capitalism doesn't come from the state. It comes from people, right? Everything that gets done is people. It's just that the state and capitalism organize people to serve the interests of capital. And once people see that all the power comes from people, we can organize ourselves to benefit everyone, right? And that's the broad strokes of believing in any form of communism whatsoever. Like, that's just the broad strokes of like whatever kind of communist you call yourself, that's it. But let's talk about the transition between where we are now and where we want to be long term. So the keywords are mutual aid networks and dual power. Do you want to tell us a little about it, Tim?
Yeah. Okay. We'll go over it quickly because we'll probably, you know, we'll definitely do a whole kind of episode about it and stuff. But like, so there's a lot of stuff you might see on Twitter and stuff where people are like, okay, we're doing this like mutual aid thing, donate to this person's GoFundMe and things like that. And that's all cool, you know, like that. It absolutely rules to be, you know, putting their money out there and stuff. The whole idea is that is still kind of just charity. Whereas when we're talking about mutual aid, we're talking about creating networks, like support networks that ideally can, you know, like people can rely on those networks in ways that they would traditionally, you know, like instead of relying on, say, like the, you know, government welfare or something like that, they can rely on their comrades kind of like outside of the capitalist system. The thing is, like, what we want to do is we want to take the reliance off of, you know, the kind of capitalist hegemony or whatever like that, and then shift it over to outside of that. And also like the idea of kind of shifting resources out of, you know, those things and into out of their basket into our basket is also kind of part of what you want to do is, well, what the goal is to build what we call dual power structures. I've got a video on this, which you know, like, I don't know.
We should probably link it in the chat so we can check you out.
Yeah. But the idea is that it's like, so capitalism has this giant advanced structure sort of thing like that. And to compete with that, we need to build our own structures. We can't just like, you know, like you see like those loser American insurrectionists or whatever like that. They like had their big moment. They stormed the Capitol and they just did absolutely nothing because they didn't have anything to do. They had no long-term goal. They didn't have any structure. Yeah, exactly. And then they went and like, they hung out in like a hotel lobby or whatever like that. But the idea is that, you know, like you build up all these like support networks, you build up these structures. So yeah, like I mean the whole thing, like the term comes from when during the before the October Revolution, the Russian Revolution, it was like they built up this force that was competing with the existing power structure. So there was dual powers. And yeah, you just get to the point where it's like, okay, well, people trust the communists more than they trust the existing government. So, like, there's no reason for them to kind of, like,
Yeah.
there's no reason not to join whatever. I mean, it's vastly more complicated than all of that. It's like the cliff notes, but that's kind of the end goal.
Yeah, I mean, I remember people in my Patreon Discord asking me in a kind of a book club discussion. We were talking about like what are the steps, right? And I think this might have been an early point at which I was like forming an idea for this show, actually, right? But people were asking me like, I don't know what the steps would be from here to world communism. And it's all very well and good to tell me do this thing and this thing and this thing. And it's all very well and good to tell me like how a communist world would work, but I don't see how they become that, right? And I think that a lot of people think that there are these kind of like, there's this big moment where it's going to like become something else, right? And it's going to become like, I don't know what people are imagining it's going to become. I think some people imagine it's going to become an army. I think other people imagine it's a commune that grows or something like that. But like, and I'm not saying neither of those things are necessarily involved or have been historically, but actually like a lot of the stuff that you look at that you can be doing right now are actually just like in absolute minuscule the exact same thing that needs to be done really long term. So an example of something we're going to cover on this show in the coming weeks is tenants unions, eviction resistance, and squatting, right? There are going to be separate episodes, and we're going to talk about, right, like the resisting landlordism and people having to pay rent, right, in an emergency, which is part of our, right, that's what you could call it, the systems of mutual aid networks, people looking out for each other, showing up when the sheriff comes to evict some fucking single mother, right? If people don't know about Moms for Housing, look up Moms for Housing. Fantastic thing that happened where like 100 people just showed up and told the sheriff to fuck off and like left these moms alone. It was awesome, incredibly based. And that's mutual aid. By the way, and then
that's what they were doing, Moms for Housing. Sorry, that's interrupt.
Right.
I'm just
I'm trying to say
like duck out for just a second. But okay. Carry on.
I'm saying that in minuscule is still part of the exact same stuff that you need long term, right? If you think about housing as an example of a topic that we will talk about on this show, you start with like people who are unfairly being evicted or illegally being evicted, and you organize a tenants union that stops that and like couches itself in the existing law a whole bunch. But hopefully you progress to like actually anyone who's being evicted, even if they have like the landlord has the law on their side, the union says no. Right, and keeps that person in their house because people have a fucking right to be in a house and shouldn't just be homeless, right? And then you get to people squatting, and then you get to like the protection of people squatting and people mutually protecting people squatting, so that ultimately a whole bunch of people are just in houses because they're human beings and for no other reason than just they're human beings and deserve to be in a house. And at that point, you're like, okay, so then we are actually talking about like abolishing, I've been trying to describe this in bigger and bigger increments, right? The next one after that is no private property, because if everyone were in a house, because people deserve to be in a house, but like the concept of ownership is just out the window, that is literally the abolition of private property. So I think that people like have kind of phrases from classical Marxism that they're familiar with, and then they have like, we could go join a tenants union, and they feel like these things aren't connected, but that's exactly what you need a show for, right? You need to discuss how the things literally link up.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I guess that like it's those mutual aid networks and the dual power structure that we're talking about. I guess like breaking it down really simply, it's looking at stuff that the people want that the government's just not doing and just doing it for ourselves, right? It's as simple as that at the end of the day, and like doing it in our immediate community. And again, like we were talking about focus in terms of like, you know, everyone thinks like, oh my God, I've got to be spread so thin and like, you know what I mean? Like do so much stuff. But actually, if you just concentrate on your like immediate community, that is like very, very, very based. And like, you know, it's all that really we could ask of you. Do you know what I mean? Or anyone could ask of you in terms of this.
Yeah, I think like one thing I'm keen on is to get, I'm going to frighten chat. We all braced. Is to give chat homework to do between the weeks.
God.
Okay, I want to tell you guys some stuff to do and see who does it right, and have you guys coming back, because I think something that
I'm not ready for this.
I know homework week 1. It's really bullshit. But like I just think that
cool
something.
Homework.
I think something. I mean, to be fair, it is incredibly based homework, and it always will be. I promise. But something that we really lack in the online left is like any sense of linearity, any sense of progression. And like, even though good things are happening all the time, watch Positive Leftist News by Mexi. It's a really, really good show. And she just highlights based shit that's happening new one out today. Every month she puts out just a compilation of all the base shit that's happened, all the big dubs for the left around the world, right? And it's something we are lacking generally, because we might have like a theory video about sex work because it's been a hot discussion and discourse recently, but then like next time that comes around, it's like we'll just share the same video over again. It just doesn't feel like we move anywhere, right?
Yeah.
That's why I want to give everyone homework. I'm sorry, everyone. I tricked you into coming here.
That's what this show's all about.
But like literally,
sorry, anarchist,
like...
it's homework time.
And then you go to bed at 9.
Yeah, it's bedtime. It's fucked.
Bedtimes. Sorry, this is tanky bullshit.
I want to read Rob's comments because Rob is a guest he's gonna be a guest on their show. Chat today's no guests. Every Sunday from here on out, we're going to do a show the same time you're watching right now, but we're going to have guests. And Rob Rousseau is going to be one of our guests. He says, check out what's happening in Kerala, India, building socialism in a state that is quite hostile to socialism. Very cool and inspiring. And we're definitely going to focus a lot, and maybe you can come on and even talk about it. Focus a lot of this show on like pointing out examples of successes, because these successes are not being shown to you. They are happening though. One of the biggest reasons that I think that, even though Bernie Sanders is a reformist, but one of the biggest reasons I think the establishment didn't want Bernie Sanders to win, it's probably not the hottest take ever, but it's because he would inspire some feeling of hope, some feeling of, hey, if we come together, we can actually do stuff. And so that it's not because he was going to increase taxes or anything. Like these things can be blocked. These things can be undone. It's the hope that he would inspire. It's the grassroots organization these are all very like communist ideas, you know, coming together as a community, not requiring an external like alienated thing, an entity, a state to like give you permission to do it or go through their channels. And so we're going to focus a lot of the show on like talking about these successes. So thanks, Rob.
Absolutely. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that just to wrap up the thing I was saying about giving people homework. Oh, someone in chat says only if you give us gold stars after. Anyone who does the homework gets a gold star. That's my promise.
This is communism, baby. We got gold stars for everybody.
I'll revisit this later for what today is, but I just wanted to say that it will be in a later week, like once we've talked about how to do this, to go chat with your neighbors and like link up with your local community. Not necessarily to go talk to them about communism necessarily. I mean, maybe if you guys want that, but like, but just to go and meet your neighbors will be a thing we want people to go do at a later point. It's a thing I haven't done, and I always encourage other people to do it. I'll be doing the homework that week, I promise. I'll do it. I'll put myself on the line there. But yeah, I'm sorry. Did I cut you off, Tim?
Oh, I mean, that's totally kind of, like, I think where we're going anyway. And, like, the thing is, like, I mean, if you are a communist or whatever, and you are doing these things, like, people will see you doing that. Like, I remember a buddy, Simba, they were doing some work recently. That's yo_its_Simba on Twitter. They were doing some work. I think it was with like a tenants union or something, and they were stopping refugees from getting evicted. And they were doing their whole thing with the hammer and sickle and all that kind of stuff like that. And like the people were like glad to have their help and they were fully stoked. It didn't like, like a lot of people think, oh, if you come out as a full commie, people will be intimidated by that. But like, no, these people were like, they were chill about it. And they were like, no, this rules. Like, thank you for your help. And people will see you in your community doing that shit. And they'll be like, that's what communists are all about, That's what they're doing, And it's,
I mean, one of the scariest things that Generation Identity did in recent years was they started feeding homeless people. They would go and find specifically white homeless people. They would go and give free meals with like hyper fascist literature to white homeless people. It's like it doesn't when you provide for people, they don't care what your ideology is, and they will be just positively inclined to you.
We get the same thing over here with there's like a really big conservative kind of shitty super conservative church down here called Destiny Church, run by a guy called Brian Tamaki, and they do heaps of like outreach to like gangs and like disadvantaged Maori, and they are super successful with it, and they have like and people love them in these communities because they're the only people that are actually out there doing it, and it's like it sucks that they're doing it. I mean, it's like good that people are getting fed or whatever like that, but it's like the people are falling through the gaps, and the only people that are trying to catch them are fucking shitheads.
Well, to go back to
so it's like
go back to what we were talking about before with the mutual aid. This is why in so many parts of America, I can just speak for America, it's illegal to just feed people. Like it's illegal just to like give people food. Like you're not allowed to do that. Which is a bizarre idea. It's also in parts in America.
Is that a federal thing or a state thing?
It's definitely probably a state or a city-based thing. But it's I know was it Food Not Bombs? What's the name of the organization?
I've heard of them.
That's one.
I mean, they oftentimes get arrested because they're just giving people food. Or like I know there's seen stories where like a priest will just try to give food to like hungry people. It's like a church outreach thing, and then they'll get like an old like priest. He's like 90 years old, and he's like getting like carried away in like cuffs. Similarly, it's illegal for say like homeless people in many parts of America to like eat out of the trash. If someone throws away a bagel, you're not allowed to take that bagel. These are all ways that the state tries to mandate that you go through their channels, that you always have to walk to your slave job every day, ask for your little penny, and then you walk over, give that penny, and then you can have your food. So when we do this type of mutual aid that we can actually like reach out to people and like say just straight up feed them, like you said, it doesn't matter what your ideology is, they're going to be grateful. And also this is, in my opinion, is a really great way to help people to understand that this is actually a really cool thing. Because you're demonstrating like, hey, you're in need and I'm here for you. I think we can all I think chat can all relate to a time in which we needed someone, whether it be like money or like a friend or something, and that experience is like seared into your mind as like maybe a person that helps you out one time. You'll never wrong them because you're like, thank you. And this is what the state tries to sabotage and make sure that you only go to them for it. So I don't know. I just wanted to bring it up to tie all the things in together.
I mean, it's a thing like the general line is the state exists to mediate class tensions in favor of the ruling class. But like taxes exist as a thing, at least in the case of more modern states, maybe less in the sense of in the case of kings, but like it's a whole history of money thing. In the modern sense, like there's an economic concept economists use called velocity of money, and like they like taxes as a thing to exist just because like otherwise the money would all just accumulate with the richest people and it would just stay there. It's a weird thing to think about because you don't think of tax. You think of taxes having a function to pay for a thing, but like if money didn't exist and a state was just like mandating that people had to go do a thing and that the resources had to be there for them to build a road or something, right? Then they would just make it happen, right? And if they were paying, and if at the same time the state were like providing for the people who are working on it to have food and clothes and all the things they wanted, etc., like the people would be perfectly happy. But like taxes, people are taxed basically to just like keep the money circulating around, just keep this illusion of like a marketplace and it's all choice and all of this shit going. And it's fucking nonsense.
Oh God, don't even get me started on that stuff. Like thinking about, what is it called? Quantitative easement. I think that the government in at least America is pouring, I think it's like at least billions, maybe I think it's like several billions of $1 billion a month, maybe more than that, just straight into line go up. Not to people, not people that need food, not student loan forgiveness, not healthcare, not homes, none of these things, not education, nothing. It's straight up just, we need to print this money and then put this money directly into this imaginary world so that this line can continue to go up and we'll continue this illusion of what you're describing.
Totally. And nonetheless, all the wealth is still pooling with all of the richest people anyway. So it's not really working that well, is it? But maybe this is a next kind of topic of discussion. Looking at my notes, I want to bring back actually something we said earlier. You mentioned the CDC, Nicole, and like you were saying about like feeling disillusioned, and now you're kind of glad when you see the way that the CDC are like
bittersweet
using,
glad,
like when you see the way that the CDC are just like mandating horrific shit, and it's completely dictated by the whims of capital. Like, so to expand on what you're kind of referencing there, right? In America, they just reduced the self-isolation time if you have COVID, if you test positive for COVID, from 10 to 5 days, right?
I think it was it was something to 5 days. I think it maybe have been quarantine or something, but I can get the exact thing up. But yeah, no, it's absolutely just against science, against health.
Absolutely.
And in the middle of, it's not like we're experiencing a lull. We're experiencing extraordinarily not a lull. We're experiencing like a mutation. We're experiencing like all sorts of issues. So go on.
Yeah. Again, Rob Rousseau in chat says, strongest economy ever, baby. By the way, don't look at what's happening in the streets of San Francisco. I often say this. If the economy is real, bring it to me. Show me. Show me it, please. If it exists, if it's real. If line go up, I have to see the line. No. The CDC. A really good take I saw on Twitter from someone was, didn't Capital just tip its hand a little with this CDC thing? Because if they can't handle people self-isolating and not being at work for 10, 11, whatever it is, days, that means that's how long you'd need to hold out for, like, in order for them to be absolutely fucked. And I think it's a super true thing. Like, my personal belief is capitalism couldn't live one single day without us. Like, the working class, if everyone who makes the actual line go up was just like, I'm just staying home, it would take a day, less than a day. I mean, that's my personal position, but like, this is an exercise I actually wanted to bring to chat today was chat, like, if you want, like, imagine for a minute that everyone who works a job, like not someone who manages people, not someone who's someone's boss, but everyone who works to do this stuff, was just like, nah, right? Was just striking and was just like, no, I'm just not going to give my labor to global capitalism. How long do you imagine global capitalism could survive for, right? Because I think some people would answer that the moment that happened, global capitalism would definitionally be dead. Others would say, in a more realistic sense, like, they have all the wealth, they can afford to kind of hold out a little longer. This is how strikes work, right? Is like they accept their losses versus how long people can afford to strike for, and that's why people have strike funds. But if people were like, we're not striking for demands, we're striking for the sake of striking, we're just gonna form this, a little of what we've already been talking about, right? Form a massive system of mutual aid, dual power structures. We've got our own structures as people now. We have our own owned by the people power structures that provide for ourselves, and we're just gonna not, like, how long do you think capitalism could survive for? I think it's less than a day, right? And I think if we're talking about having a plan across the whole, like, you know, a whole long-term plan, like, this is a really good starting place. I'm not saying this is our plan, because again, we don't really have a plan. We're not actually here to organize anything. We're a bunch of commentators. We're a bunch of like social media influencers, and we're actually like just really reporting on what's going on. But if you want to understand what I think maybe this show is fundamentally about, like that communism is going to happen, a great place to start is imagining how easily it could happen. And I think that, again, this exercise, this massive strike is just a really good starting place. Just imagine everyone on strike. Because last year we had the farmers' strike in India, right? And it was the largest strike in history, right? The largest strike on record. Gigantic. And like, if everyone struck at once, right? I hope everyone in chat is in agreement here. Capitalism would be over after not very long at all. Like, whatever amount of time you think it would be, it wouldn't be very long, right? And so that's where we start to devolve from there. I think that's a great starting point, right? Just think about that, and then like maybe the three of you will have comments on this, and maybe like your own kind of versions of the plan or whatever. But like, again, not plan, but like the story of what's going to happen. But like, if you imagine that as a really simplistic version of what's going to happen, you can all see that this is entirely possible, and in fact, exactly what's going to happen, right? Even in China, like, so in America, you know, the biggest growing subreddit is the anti-work subreddit. We'll definitely talk about that when we talk a little bit more, I think, about like online and social media and how it connects up to real world activism. There's a massive anti-work movement in China as well, the lie down flat and pet fish thing, which is like about people just like refusing to give their labor to state capitalism, just lie down flat, you know. I think it's a thing. People are experiencing this massive climate depression where they're just like, well, if the world's just going to end, I'm not going to like work, you know.
I want to point out.
Sorry, go on.
I just want to make sure we address. I know it's a lot. I just want to make sure that we address some of the things in the chat. First of all, Upright Line, thank you for the 500 bits. Sometimes mutual aid can be something as simple as this. I think that, we're going to have a whole stream talking about mutual aid and what it means. And I think we're kind of touching on that right now. But there's a few people in the chat that
it's actually going to be next week is charity versus mutual aid.
Oh, sweet. Right. Yeah, nice. Yeah. So that's going to be a really, really, really good stream, chat, because I see so many people butchering this topic, and I think it's a pretty imperative one. But there's people in the chat that a number of them are expressing stress at the idea of not working, because they're like, I can't afford to not work. First of all, I don't want to shame anyone in the chat for not being able to afford to not work, because that's a real reality. That's why we work, because we can't afford not to. And so that's why it's important that we develop organizations, we organize ourselves and create mutual aid networks, so that it's not necessary for you to have to go into work so you can have your needs met.
And also, we're not asking you to put yourself in any, you know, unnecessary danger or like financial ruin or anything. It's like these things, you know, we're sort of like talking about if you are safe to do so, if, you know, because at the end of the day, we're talking about taking resources away from the state, right? So some of those resources are absolutely going to be unemployment benefit, you know what I mean, if that's something that is feasible for you to do and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's the thing I was saying before, right? I genuinely, we like, if people are gonna drop out and refuse to work, like literally no harm in signing on at the same time, right? Because like if the state does give money to unemployed people, and you can get that money, like they will try their hardest to stop you getting it, because they try their hardest to stop everyone from getting it all the time. But like, if you are like, no work anymore, take the government check for as long as you conceivably can. Like, because that's money that is in the capitalist state and then could just be feeding people instead, you know, while you're building up like systems of mutual support. Like Nicole's completely right. Like we work because we can't afford not to under capitalism. This is what people are talking about when they say abolish work. They're talking about abolishing the capitalist notion of work, where if you don't work, you starve, right? That's what we work like. That's what we as communists care about and are working towards, isn't it? Like,
we're fighting that threat of financial violence in any way. In any way that we can.
I also want to point out,
there's people. Sorry, I just wanted to talk about this one real quick. There's people in the chat that are talking about like like what happens if all the workers don't show up? Like what happens to, where do we get food and all this kind of stuff like that? And that's obviously what we were just talking about, like mutual aid networks and, like building dual power and stuff. But yeah, like that's why these like people are saying, I saw someone say, but where do the mutual aid people get the food from? And it's like that's why it's got to be a big thing, like to get to like you can't just be like, okay, general strike now, like like I've seen people before be like, okay, we're doing a Twitch general strike, everyone stop, whatever, like that. But it's like, no, you can't do it. You can't just leap into something like that. It takes a tremendous amount of organizing. It's like literally like securing like supply lines with like preferably you're going to be working with like co-ops, people that can actually provide food and things like this. Like there is like that's a huge thing, and that's why that's why I think it is always very good to like remain a healthy amount of skepticism for people that are calling for strikes just out of nowhere or anything like that. Like sometimes we get this a lot with like kind of lefty influencer types and stuff, and
I've done it in like year 1 or 2 of being an online leftist. I've absolutely been like, we should strike and we should refuse to upload or stream or anything. And it was just like complete naivety. I had no idea what I was talking about. Can I interject a real quick thing, which is that like there was this with people online trying to organize a general strike, but they weren't really trying to organize it.
Oh no,
they were just saying, they just set a date and were like, do this thing. That's what I meant earlier when I said like if social media influencers tell you we're organizing this thing, don't do it, because social media is great for amplifying stuff that exists and saying this is a thing that people have organized, but not a place that you should actually seek leadership from. Sorry, Tim, you carry on with that.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah, like there are examples of things like I saw someone just mentioning are there historical examples of local level. You can look up like Cooperation Jackson and stuff like that, like like these like labor unions and stuff that actually kind of don't just like, they're not just like we're working as like a union for our specific local kind of force or whatever like that, but they are developing these like networks and stuff, and like I mean there is stuff like that happening all over the place. I mean like on a global scale all over the place, I would say, like you're not gonna like
the question you said from chat was like where would the people in the mutual aid network get the food, and it's like but we can all conceive that there are actually like simple enough answers to that if the system exists. Like you're right.
I mean,
like
we can look at the farmers' strikes as well.
Okay,
it's like,
well,
in
when
India?
the farmers strike, where do the capitalists get their food? Like
right, exactly. Yeah, 100%. We'll definitely do an episode that's about workers' co-ops as well. That's definitely coming up in the coming weeks. But literally, like where people get their food, it's like, well, if it's a large scale general strike, but like you haven't organized your own source of food, like with the farmers strike, like they're literally farmers, then the same place you usually get food, and it's you got money to pay for it, so then it's you actually have a strike fund, and then where does the strike fund come from? Well, a great example of what I just said about like boosting things that already exist. In the last few days, Kellogg's workers, right, got their demands met because they were able to hold out, and a huge part of that was that the Kellogg's strike fund was shared all over social media, and loads of people put their money into it. See how that's exactly that's exactly what we're describing, right? For the purposes of that strike, at least, there were people who were existing outside of capitalism. They were like, we're going to hold on, we've got a strike fund, we refuse to give our labor, and we're just living off of people's mutual aid. And then the strike fund was big enough that Kellogg's knew they weren't going to get shit done. They weren't going to be able to do anything. And then
oh my God,
they lost. Like Kellogg's lost, and the workers won.
And I'm glad you came back to that, because I just had a quick Google of that about, we were talking about the line, and as soon as the very day that Kellogg's strikers announced they were going to strike, Kellogg's lost shares. Like their shares just went down. Like that's how much we actually affect this like mythological being that we've created in our heads that is capitalism. Like that was only 58,000 strikers, of however many Kellogg's has in the world, which is like way more than that, right? You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm. B-Rat, I'm going to thank people really quickly. B-Rat, thanks for giving us a sub. To Alexia Clara, thank you. And Brisk, thanks for giving us a sub. To Defixianess, thank you. And really great conversation in the chat right now. Chatters, you're being very good. I'm very proud of you. Very good conversation. And make sure I know there's a lot of people that have insecurities about what we're talking about. Try to be kind. Obviously, if they're bad faith, they're bad faith. Not all like vocalized insecurities about the discussion we're having are always here in good faith. Oftentimes, it could be here to poke holes into like the integrity of our conversation.
Right,
but,
like this guy's like, what are your guys' thoughts on democracy in relation to communism? That's not the discussion we're having today.
We're not talking about that.
Have
Sorry,
a nice
man.
Sorry. See
Sorry.
ya.
Okay, well, I think that there's a lot of. I think to be fair, there's a lot of Twitch that is focused on these types of conversations, and I think we need to keep reminding people that this is not what we're here for. We're actually doing something that's never been done before on Twitch, so if this is a novelty to some of the chatters, that's understandable.
And for that reason, people are going to be trying to poke holes in this because there's a lot of people, sadly, who are invested in not doing anything. Do you know what I mean? And it's very likely.
But that's okay. No,
that's fine.
The more important message is exactly what Nicole was saying.
Yes.
Chatters, be kind. The important thing is that people show up here and want to learn stuff, and more importantly, want to do stuff. Like that's what we're literally here for. Is like telling people what they can do and getting people to go away at the end of the day and do the stuff.
Also, I see a lot of people in chat that are talking about people they would like to have on the show, because we will be having guests, and every Sunday we're gonna have the show at the same time, 2 p.m. Pacific, for about 3 hours. And so today we don't have any guests. This is just the standard host of the show. But if you have guest recommendations, let us know, or maybe even tell them about the show so they can be interested, and we can they can contact us, whatever. So that would be great. So all of you saying, because there's so many people that are talking about different guests that they would like to see, and these are all really good recommendations.
Excellent.
Yeah. So sorry.
We've got so much stuff to talk about. So much stuff as well.
Lots of stuff, chat. I think Tim, were you gonna say something?
I was just gonna say,
do shit for me.
Yeah, like to anyone that is asking questions, like like our opinion on democracy and communism and stuff like that. Like if, like I don't, like we don't want to like bum you out and be like, that's not what we're talking about today or whatever like that. Like I mean, if you,
okay, I'm sorry, I was mean. I'm sorry.
I'm not
if you're new to this kind of stuff or whatever, and like that might be like an obvious question or whatever like that, but like we're gonna cover all kinds of different things. I don't know if like discussing things like that is kind of like on the agenda for this show in particular. We're going to be talking about more like like actual community stuff instead of like ideological kind of like communism versus anarchism or anything like that. So just like don't want to bum me out or anything like that.
In fact,
it's just a different thing than what we're doing right now.
That we are actually going to be talking about a lot of democratic stuff within our
absolutely.
idea of communism. So if that's something you don't know anything about, then stick around.
But for the record, like all of us stream.
Wait, put a bebop.
Yeah,
three Brits against one American. What is this? Like I'm gonna I should ban you right now.
Oh my god! They think you're a Brit.
That's
Tim.
horrific. Sorry, not cool.
But yeah, we all have each of us have our own show. I talk about politics 5 days a week for 7 hours a day. I know that DJ Mule, Conquest of Dread, they all have their shows. Conquest of Dread does more, I think, more gaming, but you still talk about politics plenty. So you can always check our shows out and talk to us about these ideas further. But we're trying to do something different this time. We're trying to actually instead of all of the kind of more, I don't know. It makes
you
me
can
feel
watch
like
us
we're just
dunk on
spreading our
Ben
wings.
Shapiro in the week, right?
Yeah.
We'll do that in the week.
So to bring back around some of the discussion that we have planned for today, that's the thing. That's the important thing. We have planned discussions and we want to have them. Those are the topics each week. Audience participation will come in when it comes in. Your homework, that's an important participation. The rest is us. And if you want to interact with us, there's all the rest of the time. But bringing back around the discussion for today, I saw someone in chat saying that they have a community garden up the road from them. And I think it's important to understand a distinction between community gardens and gardening and growing food for mutual aid. where but I'm gonna make this point but then counter myself. So I'm not just being harsh on this person. Community gardens are often actually something that, while giving the appearance of like a knit community that are feeding each other and whatever, like don't produce enough food to actually like feed people all the time, and do create a very like middle class, comfy aesthetic that helps to gentrify a neighborhood. Whereas like seizing bits of abandoned land and using it for the intent purpose of actually feeding people who are hungry, known as guerrilla gardening. There's sometimes urban reclamation where people are trying to turn abandoned places into more beautiful spaces rather than trying to farm from them. You know, that's more what we're talking about. But I want to reiterate the thing I said earlier about how there's kind of a sliding scale from one thing to another, right? While I've said this is this and this is this, they are connected, right? And it's like I was saying about like tenants unions, eviction resistance, squatting, abolition of private property, right? You can see these things as being on a track, and actually like community gardening can still be a great start. I'm not actually just being down on community gardening. I'm trying to say that like while it can have that effect and can just be a gentrifying force, if there's nothing else, it's a great place to start. If you and a bunch of comrades are into your community garden together, and then like the next thing you're doing is like, this is cool, but we want to actually feed people, and this garden isn't big enough, and you decide to go like find some land and fucking deliberately grow stuff there for the sake of feeding hungry people, that fucking rocks. Like, so again, not just trying to be down on that person, just trying to talk about like the perspective we want to have here, right? Which is that there are things that are entrenched in the existing system. Community gardens are a great example because they are entrenched in the existing system. And then there's on the other end communists who are feeding each other as a community. Right?
Interesting. Jameson says great first episode so far. Will this be put up on YouTube? Yes. So on my YouTube channel, !YouTube, you can anytime you want to, ! YouTube or ! YT. My channel is called Bad Bunny Official Clips. We'll be putting these on that channel. I'm going to warn you all, I am going to be doing rebranding one of these days. Hopefully pretty soon, because it's just really hard to find there's just too much Bad Bunny, the Puerto Rican rapper, and Bad Bunny, the internet person, but then it's really hard to find me, and lots of people hate me, and so they make all sorts of videos that kind of drown out my videos. And so basically, so just keep that in mind. But at this moment, and the URL will always be available in my stream chat and all my panels and my Twitch and my Twitter and so on and so forth. So !YT, subscribe to that, and we will have these all up in a specific playlist for you all to be able to access later. So thank you, Chilled Red.
So how about this for a discussion? And I already touched on this a little with a couple of books I've been recommending. I'll reiterate. I've got Climate Leviathan, Joel Wainwright, and Geoff Mann. And the other one is How to Blow Up a Pipeline by Andreas Malm. The latter is an argument about pacifism and nonviolent resistance and civil disobedience that people have engaged in historically to fight climate change. And this is the shape of the discussion, right? We here at Red Planet don't endorse anyone doing anything illegal, but we do think that it's reaching an inevitable point where the state has not responded to civil disobedience, right? So this is a distinction that's going to be important going forward in the show between things that we are advocating. We are advocating for civil disobedience and legal forms of activism and pacifism and going on strike and things like this. Go talk to your neighbors, join a union, grow networks of mutual aid. However, we do think it's inevitable. People are going to be doing things like, as the book How to Blow Up a Pipeline talks about, like sabotaging oil pipelines, things that are constructing and harming the environment, this just literally smashing the machinery that is doing the direct harm to the planet and setting our world on fire and bringing us all closer to extinction.
And it's already happening as well. That's the thing. We're essentially commenting on what is already happening.
Exactly. And so that's the shape of what we're going to talk about across the show. But like, do people have any thoughts about this kind of distinction between these two things, these two kinds of things?
Yeah, I mean, sorry, go on, Tim, if you want.
I was gonna say, yeah, about the community garden things. Like, I think some people have mentioned in chat. Like, sorry, just like the whole thing about like sometimes something like that can seem like really cool, but is actually kind of just a tool for gentrification and stuff like that.
Right.
So, yeah, like there's like a huge difference between like a little, urban oasis where people can get a little bit of kale or whatever, to like, like actually like, building proper gardens and all that kind of stuff, and that's more part of the like the mutual aid stuff that we'll get back to. But I just saw some people talking about stuff like that in chat, and I just wanted to
totally. I mean, I think like the Persian for garden was paradisoi, which is where we get our word paradise from, because like the idea of a garden is about like a luxury space, and like in our in the American empire that we live in, right, with the dream of the white picket fence, like we're all supposed to be entitled to our own little paradise. And I think that like thinking about the distinction between a community garden and a community farm would be like maybe the cleanest distinction you can make. Like this one is for some people to enjoy, this one is for some people to get fed, right?
Yeah. And I think like there's also like when you start thinking about a lot of this stuff, like, and you'll see why a lot of the really good organizations kind of address, like they may be like just like, a prison abolition organization or something like that, but they might also have, like official stances on land reform and things like that. Is because once you start kind of looking into these things, you realize how it's all kind of connected, like the way that people utilize land, the way that land is owned under kind of, capitalism or whatever like that. It's tied into these things. It stops people from being like the commodification of the land stops things like communal gardens kind of thing from happening.
Yeah,
because
totally.
Once that, like it's like a domino thing. It's like once you start changing the way that we relate to this, then like the whole thing just like the house of cards starts waving a little bit.
Exactly.
So I think like it's good to keep a lot of that stuff in mind when you're looking at organizations and stuff. And same thing with like unions and stuff. Just
absolutely, but Mule, you were going to talk about the.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. Yeah, no worries.
Between different things.
So in terms of well, I don't know if this matches what you want me to talk about, Sophie, but in terms
we're all seeing that I secretly pull the strings here at Red Planet.
That's right. No, but I mean like directly answers the question. But the way that I see it is that like it doesn't even have to take like. Obviously we're talking about this book, How to Blow Up a Pipeline, and obviously we're not telling people to go and blow up a pipeline, but it is inevitable, right? But it doesn't necessarily have to take that form, So, if we talk about the Wet'suwet'en people who are struggling in the land known as Canada now, right? And they are actively, it's sabotage, but then the word sabotage is loaded, right? It's loaded. It makes you think like, oh, this is nasty, it's gross, and it's like, well, actually, no. All they're doing is they are like getting a what do you call it? Just a digger, right? A caterpillar thing,
bobcat digger thing.
Yeah, right. And they're just driving it to their land and just being like, sorry, that's ours now. You can't use it, and then using it to just like build ditches in the road to stop the construction workers from actually getting to the construction site they need to complete the pipeline. And it's as simple as stuff like that, really, that we're gonna see so many more instances of this. I was also hearing on a stream recently, I think maybe you watched this, Nicole, but I can't remember, about the people of Hawaii who are like currently protesting about the Navy's. They have like an oil.
Like
you know about this,
fuel.
Tim?
It's It's
right.
Anyone that wants to see more about this, maybe tune into Silver Spook's stream.
That's right.
Or follow Silver Spook on Twitter. But so the Navy has been leaking fuel out into the water. It's really fucked up, and it's been going on for ages. It's like literally poisoning people, even poisoning the Navy themselves, and they're getting defectors, people from the Navy being like, this is fucked up, like, and joining the locals. But yeah, and it's the same thing that's happened.
We think that like QAnon, like eating ivermectin or whatever, because they're so wildly crazy because they believe in wild shit, but it's like the Navy are poisoning themselves because like American imperialism is just as much of a fucking brainworm as fucking QAnon.
Oh my god.
But yeah, and I mean, like,
you.
yeah, there's like there's a lot of similar struggles going on down here at the moment. Like a little while back, we had the whole thing with Iamatao. We've got at the moment we've got a couple. Like one notable one is Putiki, which is on Waiheke, a small island just off just like, you know, in the harbor of Auckland, where it's like and like in all these cases, even over in Canada and Hawaii and stuff, a lot of the time the state or the developers and stuff, they're the ones breaking the laws. They're the ones, you know, illegally and stuff. But like the thing is, like, you know, like for capital, it doesn't matter, you know, like it yeah, and like I think at a lot of these times when you kind of see the apparatus of the state become really transparent, where it's like, okay, there's a developer that has signed a shady deal, but they have like the police or sometimes even the army enforcing it for them, you know? And yeah, I think like a lot of these things can be like really radicalizing moments for a lot of people. But yeah, it's I think it is also one of those things where you I think a lot of people kind of tune them out a little bit, especially in like leftist spaces. A lot of people tune out a lot of indigenous kind of like land struggles because they kind of think like, oh, that's like always been happening, or like, oh, it's just, you know, it's stuff from the past and they need to kind of get past it. But I think that yeah, everyone here, I think it would benefit for them to maybe just look into that stuff a little bit. Like I said, follow Silver Spook if you want to hear about the stuff in Hawaii. There's plenty of people out there. Just off the top of my head, I'm like totally blanking. But yeah, I often talk a lot about
Iamatao, Anarchist Federation's magazine, Organize, which I'm subscribed to. Actually, their most recent issue did an article on Iamatao.
Oh wow,
so
I didn't know that. Yeah,
it's something cool you can check out too.
Yeah,
cool. And I think these also kind of help in the way that we can look at, you know, like when these things are successful, what's happening and all this kind of stuff like that. There are a lot of you know, I think that there's a lot of like organizations like, you know, communist or anarchist orgs that could probably like, I think a lot of the time the goals are like simpatico, you know. It's like the guides are the goals are aligned a lot more than what people think. And I think yeah, it's
no, it's completely true. I think you're completely right. Like, I think we need to be like, I think that the coming resistance to the systems that are killing all of us, right, are gonna, the resistance that we will see will learn from indigenous people the world over in settler colonial states, because like, as much as like white leftists think really arrogantly, like, it's you know, that, like you said, it's always been going on, you know, nothing to be done about that, it's whatever, like it has been like indigenous people's struggle has been going on since the beginning of whichever settler colonial state you want to look at, and therefore the indigenous people have the most experience about resisting the state to learn from, and a long list of wins, as well as, like, you know, we all kind of assume, I guess that's the real arrogance, right, of white leftists, is like assuming because the settler colonialist state, be it, you know, New Zealand or America or whatever, like because it exists, the indigenous people must have by definition just lost and it's over. And it's actually like, well, no, like a whole bunch of whiteys like are there agreeing to pretend there's a thing there called America or agreeing to pretend there's a thing there called Canada or New Zealand, but like that's not game over, you know, like
and I think it's like I think Alexia Clara, who I think I read out a comment of theirs earlier as well, says a lot of lefties unfortunately dismissive of stuff like land back. Yeah, I think it's like when you actually talk to a lot of people about it and you explain, like, you know, like land back as kind of like a slogan for like land reform and stuff, like a lot of people that are communists and anarchists are like, oh yeah, I absolutely agree with that. You know? Like, they're like, no, they're like, but that's the thing we're saying, and it's like, yeah, no, but that's the thing that we've been saying for a long time. And you know, like it's kind of it is frustrating, but I think we're getting there with a lot of people, and I think a lot of people that didn't understand it, that kind of made fools of themselves on Twitter recently, you know, and like no one in particular or whatever, actually, like, maybe even though initially it seemed like it was like kind of harming the cause, I think in a roundabout way, they kind of embarrassed themselves so thoroughly that a lot of people were exposed to the correct information eventually.
That's it.
Yeah,
actually,
I mean, like sorry, Nicole.
I was
please
going to say that leads me to a very natural declaration. One of the reasons we're doing this show, chat, is to set the new standard for Twitch politics, so just political, leftist political stuff. We're not naming names, but many people have, like you said, embarrassed themselves and have been extraordinarily like problematic and bigoted and just, you know, I would say
They've been cringe.
Yeah, they were cringe. But unfortunately, this is like a style of so-called leftism on the internet that is so thoroughly popularized for whatever reason. This monster that's been created. So one of the reasons what we wanted to create this show is not only the things that we're talking about, but also to set the new standard for Twitch politics and just, you know, not just Twitch, but you know what I mean. Twitch politics, internet politics on the left. Yeah. And so when this show continues, we're going to have it every single Sunday. We're going to, if you like the format and you want to copy it on your own side, on your own show, we encourage you to do so. We want you to do this.
Yeah. 100%.
We will, if you want us to like help in any way, you know, reach out to us. We'll see what we can do, but like we encourage you to create a trend out of this because having it all in one stream is a lot. It's you know, we want to spread the wealth. The wealth.
Frankly, like if there's stuff that like if you agree with us that revolution is inevitable, that this is what people are going to be doing, and you want to get on a show and talk about it, like fucking go ahead. If you think that we aren't covering something very well, that's great news. We want everything to be covered as well as possible. Yeah. And so if you think we're doing a bad job, fucking do a better job. Like we would love that. But yeah, like I think it would be fair to say we all again, we're not interested in drama, we're not interested in naming names, but like there has been a streak of what's been describing itself as patriotic socialism, and is really just a red-brown thing, which has been the most extreme critics isn't even the right word, just decriers of land back and indigenous self-determination, because a whole bunch of people have been acting like you can be a communist and love America, and you can't. Sorry, sweetie, bad news. Go home. You're drunk.
That's leftist for aesthetics, right?
But like that's one thing. Like when we say, you know, what Tim's been saying and what I was saying, like, you know, indigenous people will absolutely be the people that like so many leftists are learning from in this struggle. It's just, that's factually true. And when people position themselves opposing to that, they're not only just morally wrong or wrong in like a political discourse sense or whatever, they are cutting themselves off from, like, once again, the people who have literally the most historic experience of resisting the existing capitalists framework, right? They are cutting themselves off from this, and like, you know, white folks who think that they can just dictate the entirety of something, for that matter, cis folks, for that matter, het folks, for that matter, able-bodied folks who think they can dictate the entirety of something without hearing other perspectives, they're dinosaurs, and they're going to be left behind by the inevitable complete like need, not just like the practicality or the benefits, but the need to include everyone's voices and everyone's perspectives in. You know?
And it's also in terms of like the way that the way that we see things going with revolution being inevitable, they'll be left behind just by that, really, in general, because it's like, if you're just gonna, you know, not contribute anything towards the conversation of how we get to where we know things are going, then you're kind of defunct, you know? You kind of I
also just want to shout out, I just saw them in the chat, Extremely Online Left. I just put a link to their Twitch channel. I just saw that they were chatting away in there.
Please do.
Australian, a great Australian leftist Twitch channel that they mentioned in there that they get on, you know, like commie party members and like union organizers and stuff like that. And they're I think they're in Australia, I think maybe Melbourne off the top of my head, I can't remember. I've tuned in a couple times. They're really good. So yeah, I love that, like on a local level, like organizing something like that is something that, you know, like a lot of people can do, you know, like if you're already doing stuff on Twitch or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You could get together with some local friends that you're all in the same bars, and you could do something like that. Like,
Mhm.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to shout them out.
No, I appreciate it.
No, that's dope.
And that's an important thing, as well as people who like, you all in chat recognize from being like online lefty faces. Rob Rousseau again, shout out. Like, other people who will be on because they're our pals and they're well known. We will definitely be putting a big focus into having people on who are doing incredibly based shit and like, frankly, exciting opportunity chat. Like, if you do some incredibly based shit, we probably want to hear about it. So like, if you want to be on the show, like, go do something incredibly based.
Yeah, totally. What's that Wikipedia list of revolutions? Like, this is incomplete.
You can help by expanding.
Yeah.
Sorry, Nicole, I think I cut you off.
No. I was just going to thank people for the subs. I just also want to mention that Rob Rousseau has gotten like 5 shout outs in this one stream.
And now it's 6. Shout out my boy,
now
Rob
this
Rousseau.
is number 6. I'm disgusted. I'm vomiting right now.
Capital.
Okay, if you're thanking the chatters, I'm going to run to the loo.
Okay. B-Rat, thank you for gifting a sub to Extremely Online Left. Thank you, B-Rat. Pone, thanks for giving a sub to Fat Ginger Beard. Thank you, Pone. Hard Revenge, thank you so much for, I think it's Hard Revenge, right? Your name's in Korean. Hard Revenge, thank you for gifting a sub to That Conrad Zimmerman. Thank you. That Conrad Zimmerman, it's good to see you. Speaking of indigenous, Lizard, thank you for Lizard's my indigenous mod. Lizard, thank you for the $5. Eli, you're a child, slept through his lunch, so you get his lunch money. Well, thank you, Lizard. If no one knows the meme, it sounds horrible. We have a meme on my stream in which I demand your donations. I demand them, and so sometimes Lizard likes to give her child's lunch money to me. Thank you, Lizard. Thank you for thank you for that. Such a good friend.
No food for Eli today. Yeah.
No food for Eli. You snooze, you lose. Okay. B-Rat, thanks for giving us up to Casey Explosion. Casey's wonderful. Thank you, B-Rat. Yeah. And we're all caught up now. You're very welcome.
Sweet. Yeah, and it's so like talking about the Hawaii stuff, it's like that kind of protest is completely different to what the wetsuit people are doing, right? Because the wetsuit
yeah. I mean, and it's a thing, right? It's like like adapting to the conditions of the place. Like, and it can be hard to tell people exactly what to go out and do. Where it's like, that's the thing with like there's no 10-step, extremely clear 10 steps for everywhere in the world to shrug off the fucking chains or whatever like that. You got to kind of adapt to the current system, and for a lot of indigenous protests, indigenous organizations, it is about adapting to the reality of the of the settler colonial state in their area, so so we do see a lot of variation in that. A lot of people always go like, what is land back, can you tell me, this kind of thing, and it's like, well, what do you mean, like where, who, it's
yes, like, right, indigenous people are not a monolith, right?
Absolutely,
100%. So it's like, so that's the kind of thinking that we have to try and sort of think about when it comes to this stuff. That like Tim says, there's no one set way of doing anything, and just because one protest group is doing something doesn't mean that another protest group should do that, or activist group or whatever you want to call it. And I had something really good to go into after that, but I've completely forgotten what it is. It's gone, totally gone. I'm sure I wrote it down.
Quick question: is it a biscuit or is it a cookie?
It's a biscuit.
It's both down here.
Is it really?
I think I feel like we're influenced by both like the UK and America.
Oh, God.
Chat sound off. Biscuit or cookie? Like it
sucks.
Okay, let me put something on. This is gonna be the breaker of all things.
Even though your chat is like
what you're all here
American,
for.
right?
I know it's extraordinarily biased toward Americans, like in my streaming time and like my general audience. But okay, since
I'm seeing biscotti in the chat, that's pretty cool. I like that.
Okay, so is this a biscuit or a cookie? Go. Now this is leftist content. This is what you came here for.
Yeah. This is
I figured Sophie's taking a.
But they're not like they're not like proper biscuits because they're like kind of soft, you know?
What do you think
They've not
cookies
been
are?
cooked.
What are the rules?
They've not been
What are the
cooked
rules?
long enough.
Okay.
So is it? Does cookie mean that the cooking is part of it? It's...
Yeah, because it's just been cooked a little bit. So it's a cookie.
Oh my god.
Not a cook id.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And
I like how
then
we
you-
killed
yeah,
the credibility of this establishment just in one fell swoop. Now no one was like, ugh.
obviously. You know what, folks? You call it what you want. I don't care.
Well,
You can make a new word for it if you want.
wow. That is very like anti-establishment of you. You're just
Yeah,
rejecting
pretty
the whole
liberal.
liberal. Yeah.
Yeah, I like abolish words. The words are a
Now
waste of
into
time.
the fucking postmodern zone.
I mean, Nabisco's technically National Biscuit Company. Well, then that means
Oh.
if you call them biscuits, then you're like part of the capitalist machine.
Right,
Yeah.
Like calling it
Yeah,
like
bootlicker, what
Kleenex
are you
instead
doing?
of tissue.
right,
Mhm.
exactly. Oh shit, you are right.
Mm-hmm.
You are right.
In
Yeah,
fact,
I read a.
you need
yeah.
to like not like even if biscuit came before Nabisco, now you can't call it biscuit. This is what this
Yeah.
stream is about. Okay, this is how we do it.
So
This is
I
a
re-
real praxis here. Folks.
This is
That's
real
right.
praxis.
So I don't know if this is a thing that like influenced the book Cloud Atlas, but I remember reading the book Cloud Atlas. It might not even be Cloud Atlas, but there was a book that I read, and I don't know if it was a thing that was happening before this book was written, but they were saying that in the future people are going to refer to things by their brand names rather than what they are. So
People
you
already
know,
do that.
Mm.
right, exactly. No, we do that now, but this book was written like nearly 15 years ago or something. I don't know.
Oh, right.
And in the UK, like, so for example, the big thing that I remember was like Starbucks, right? Like I'm gonna go get a Starbucks rather than I'm gonna go get a coffee, and we never
Oh,
did
yeah.
that in the UK at that
I
time.
think we've
No
always
way.
done that down here. Like that's
Have you?
always been a thing. Yeah. It's like
Oh my god.
you know, like I remember when people would like when I was a kid and people would talk about like like Glad wrap or whatever like that.
Yeah.
And then as an adult, like I still call all kinds of plastic wrap Glad wrap. Like I'm like,
Oh, we called
I
I called Saran wrap, so that's also the brand.
Saran
Yeah,
wrap,
exactly. Yeah. Or like like sellotape or something like
Mhm.
that.
See, we
you know?
call it cling film, and is that what it's actually?
Cling film is not a
Cling
brand.
film?
I think that's like the actual
No.
name
Yeah,
of it.
exactly.
That is
right?
just what it is,
Right?
right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we're
Hmm.
still kind of like that in the UK, which is weird because we are not a normal island. You know what I mean? In any stretch of the
Yeah, yeah.
imagination.
I think
So-
Maverick is like asking the hard questions. So like what do you call like the biscuit monster?
I like how they
I mean-
cannot do this show without Sophie.
Yeah.
Does like the Cookie Monster not have a name?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Has
Like-
anyone ever asked?
Yeah, no one cares. They just like they're just like that guy that scrans all the cookies. It's bullshit. Like, what's his name?
Scrums.
What's their name?
Yeah.
you know?
I've never even heard that word.
Where they
before.
from?
You know what's funny is how American brand names are like pronounced in other languages. It's like
Oh,
they
yeah.
take. It's like I don't even know what level of capitalism that is. Where like other languages are now creating like their
Cultural
version of
imperialism,
these
yeah.
names. It's like their language has like absorbed this. Like when I was in Greece looking for Starbucks, it's Puine is like where is Puine to Starbucks. You had to call it Starbucks Starbucks.
Sick.
I don't even like know what to make
Amazing.
of that. Like you couldn't say Starbucks. It's now a Greek spin on it because now it's now being absorbed into like the culture to that extent that it has its own
Yeah.
like custom word.
That's wild. See, there's the first bit of praxis you could do, chat. Stop calling things by the company names. That's the praxis.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm gonna-
that's
I'm-
active rebellion.
I'm gonna try to like get us back on track here, sort of, kind of. When we
Yeah.
were talking
Oh,
about
you saw Soph coming. Oh.
let's be chat. When Sophie gets back, I want everyone to pretend that we've been talking about very serious things. Be like,
Yeah.
that's so true. Wow. Say stuff
Yeah.
like that. Say it's so true. I never
backwards
thought
chat.
about it that way.
Mm,
Okay.
so true. Yeah.
That's so true. I never thought about it that way, and I can't wait to do this myself. Or
Yes.
something. Or tell my neighbors, or I learned so much. Yeah. Don't
I'm
nodders,
seeing
please
a lot of
don't.
nodders. I'm seeing a lot of nodders, and it's good. I'm
Oh my
liking
God, I
it.
can't. My chat knows that there's certain emotes that I have to start mimicking, and nodders is one of them. But I'm trying to not do it right now because I know there's.
I've been
new
doing a
people-
lot of
If
nodding.
you donate.
It's
That's
okay.
the
I've been
rule
doing a
here.
lot of nodding.
No
I'm
friends
doing the
with
nodding
money.
for you.
Okay,
today,
no,
Nicole.
you don't understand. Ash. Thank you so much, Ash, for the 50 subs. Thank you, Ash.
Whoa.
Fun clap.
Oh,
Thank you,
wow.
Ash.
Yeah, that's really
And
good.
thank you, Zapstraight, too. Thank you for gifting a sub to Silent Storm on 1313. Thank you.
Nice.
Don't you dare
Yes.
mimic.
But you are right. You are right. We should. Yeah.
Chat.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
as I
so,
was saying.
yeah.
No, go on.
Yeah, no, I was gonna bring it back. I was gonna bring it back to like the discussion about community gardens, and really want to briefly say that although I think what we were saying before is, yeah, it's so true. I know, right? Thank you. Very good points. What we were saying, it's very base, yes. What we were saying before, I'm not disputing, but I do want to say that I do still think there's value, maybe not in specifically the community garden, but in building some sort of community something. I like to
100%.
I tell people that like you can do like, what do I say, little communisms, or like we're basically, this is the revolution, we just do little like revolutions or whatever. Like something
Right.
you can do to undermine something that undermines capitalism and helps to strengthen communism. It doesn't have to be a monetary material, like necessarily, I mean, materials, I guess, are always ubiquitous, everything, but it doesn't have to be this grand gesture. It doesn't have to be this massive thing. It could be something, in my opinion, as little as like getting to know your neighbors. You get to know them.
Right.
What's their name? They exchange numbers. Maybe if they need something, you give it to them, and then you have this like exchange. It's not a community.
That's what we want people to do. Go do some like little things that are mutual aid.
And that means you have to touch grass, perhaps. Maybe you might be. You might have to. Not. It doesn't have. You know. You might.
Everyone, I've remembered what I was supposed to say. So in talking about how the protesters in Hawaii are different to obviously what sweating people are doing, that is something to look at in terms of exactly what Nicole was saying, focusing on your immediate surroundings, right? Because it's not about, you know, everybody do the same thing. It's about do what your community needs you to do.
Yes.
Obviously we all need to do things to fight climate change. That's obviously a given. That's a global issue. But I guess that's where the saying think global, act local comes from, right? You know what I mean? And I think people sort of bastardize that to mean whatever they want, you know what I mean? But in this case, you know, I'm being serious. It's like, what can you do in your immediate surrounding to aid us? To aid the transition into communism kind of thing, because the wet sweating people are doing their bit, and you know, you could support them in many ways. You know, it's you know, same with the people of Hawaii, same with any other protests that's going on all over the world. But in terms of what we need to start seeing a dynamism, like an internal dynamism of, is people doing their own things in their own communities, especially in the imperial core. As you know, as we call it, you know, the UK, New Zealand, Australia, America, because that's where the rot is kind of, it's happening there. You know what I mean? That's where we're seeing a lot of stuff as well. That's where we're seeing the Kellogg strikes. That's where we're seeing. I don't know. You couldn't call.
It will be a matter of life and death for communities in the imperial periphery to resist imperialism, and it always has been. And they will do it because it's a matter of life or death. And if you want to help them, one of the most important things you can do is be dropping out in the imperial core, withholding your labor, making the imperial core malfunction. Because make no mistake, like, it's not just that, like, first of all, you do benefit from imperialism if you're in the imperial core. It's a concept called the labor aristocracy. It's another reason why this patriotic socialism is a bunch of guff, because because
they're always saying that this doesn't happen.
Right.
Can you define imperial core, imperial periphery for us real quick, for some people that don't know it?
So the countries that are the most direct beneficiaries of the current imperialism. So American imperialism is just one name that we have for a force that covers the entire world. You could call it the global system of debt. You could call it international capitalism. You could call it American imperialism. You could call it neoliberalism. You could call it climate change. They're actually all just names for facets of the same thing. And make no mistake, they absolutely are the same thing. But we call it American imperialism because America is the prime beneficiary of global capitalism right now. But like a whole ton of countries are the next to prime beneficiaries. Canada, all the European countries, Britain, RIP and pies, New Zealand, Australia, and then there are countries that are imperial subjects, right? And they have their wealth, their labor, their natural resources, everything drained out of them for the benefit of the imperial core. That is the imperialist relationship. People should, I don't have it in the pile right now, but how the West underdeveloped Africa, I think is the name. If people in the chat will probably know better than me, that's a good book about this. There are tons and tons of things that you can read about this, but we used to talk about the third world because of USSR, and then the third world. But that's an outdated term, obviously, because, well, for one, the USSR doesn't exist anymore. But then we would talk about the global north and the global south. I think the most useful term is the imperial core versus the imperial periphery.
Yeah.
Basically,
I like this.
Using different language and metaphors to describe richer and poorer countries, but it's also important to understand how they came to be that way and have language that describes the system that continues to keep them that way. There's another book which I recommend, which I haven't read, so this one, take that with this recommendation, but I'm intending to read soon, I've heard good things about, called Africa is Not Poor, Africa is Being Looted, right? So that's a good example of exactly what I'm talking about, that this imperialist relationship around the world is countries that are beneficiaries and countries that, or is it benefactors? No, beneficiaries. And then countries that are being looted actively. They're having things taken from them. So there you go. That's imperial core versus imperial periphery. And
it's a lot better than global north and global south, because
that always kind of confused me too.
Well, the global north, it kind of implies white supremacism, because all the countries that are at the north of the map are like white countries, like so to speak, right? And I was in a really, I think it was $27 stream. I was in a really good fucking bit of his stream where he was like showing like the map flipped, like if you've ever looked at the map of the world upside down, because of course it is just, there is no like set way to how it should be, right? You know, and it's it's a bit of an eye-opener, just like how big different countries are and how small other countries are.
But what I was saying was that this imperialism, it doesn't just create a higher quality of life and certain benefits and so on for people who are in the imperial core. It does actually rely on labor within the imperial core. Like there are great engines of empire in every imperial subject country, right? And when those countries refuse to give their labor, their exports, etc., to imperialism, there is usually extremely violent pushback. Either in systemic violence or in explicit violence. So 2 examples, South Africa and Chile. Salvador Allende was assassinated and replaced with General Pinochet, who ran a murder, rape, and torture-loving regime where he brutalized the people of Chile to enforce not free market economics in the country. It didn't fucking matter what the economy of Chile was like. It was about creating global neoliberalism. So this is what I mean when I say that neoliberalism is just another name for global capitalism, American imperialism, etc. Is that like the violent regime of Pinochet was to give Chile's wealth to America. That was the purpose of it, right? People misconstrue this as being like they put in people who would create like a free market economy in that country. It doesn't fucking matter what the economy is in that country. It's defending free market ideology is the thing. So that's that's literal violence, and then there's like systemic violence, like in South Africa, where Nelson Mandela wasn't able to implement his Freedom Charter, which involved, like, for example, nationalizing South African gold mines because they had divorced South African Central Bank from control by the government, and so the government couldn't do shit without getting loans from the IMF and the World Bank, meaning those organizations, which are massive tools of American imperialism and global capitalism, they will only give money to countries if those countries enforce neoliberal economics. See, so that's systemic violence, right? And so the point is that and by the way, both of those examples talked about in a lot more detail in a really good book called The Shock Doctrine by Naomi Klein. I cannot recommend it enough. It is like a regime, like a paradigm shifting book that like you read and then there's like your life before reading it and your life afterwards. It's an incredible book. But the point that I was making was that like countries in the imperial periphery that are being exploited will fight back because it is life or death and they have to.
Yeah.
We in the imperial core have to both withhold our labor from the imperial core and support
I'm your
them.
friend if you donate.
And
That's
us
the rule
withholding
here.
our labor
No
is
friends
supporting
with
them,
money.
because if the empire itself gets weaker and is unable to exploit them and unable to attack them, right, it will make their struggle easier. And it will also, like, if America doesn't feel like there's a thing worth like fighting for, basically, like if within America it's just like people are just completely withholding their labor, then what would they, they wouldn't be able to justify endless imperialist wars to the people based on the idea that it's for the people if the people are withholding their labor, is the point. There's a whole conversation to have here about the Vietnam War and the way that people who were encouraging a dropout culture in America were deliberately funneled into the American war machine to employ them, because the ruling class is terrified of working age adults who withhold their labor. Then it was, they were terrified of working age men. Now it's, hey, a little bit more gender equality. Yay. They'll probably conscript women too if they want to force hippies into working. But the point is, we advocate a lot that people drop out from the imperial core, and that we need to foster this dropout culture and grow like just a rot and a decay inside the imperial core. What the response to that will be is predictable, because it's literally happened before. Something that I will doubtless say 1,000 times on this show is that the hippie movement is represented in popular media as this ineffectual, lovey-dovey, drug-addled, free, open your mind, so on and so forth. And that's because those elements that did exist have had the context of leftism removed from them to defang them in popular fiction, to pretend that it wasn't nearly, which it was, that it wasn't nearly a communist revolution in America in the 60s and 70s. It was nearly that. The American ruling class really doesn't want you to know that, so they don't. So they don't portray it. They portray hippies as useless idiots.
Well, Nixon did a number on creating that imagery with the war on drugs. By
Absolutely.
saying that's the reason why he made marijuana illegal, was to criminalize being a hippie, essentially, and to demonize.
And that's why so many people were forcibly conscripted into the Vietnam War, is my point, is because they needed to get this population and force them into the machine. Our idea of the disillusioned Vietnam vet is wrong. We had this idea of a guy who like signs up almost like after 9/11 or something, someone who signs up to protect their country and they come back home and they're all disillusioned. No, they were dragged there. They were kidnapped from the street. They were forced into combat fatigues, and then they had their fucking legs blown off, right? While witnessing Dow Chemical dropping napalm on children. And then they come home to a country that has no interest in feeding or sheltering them or giving them any treatment for their mental and physical disabilities. They're being treated like the enemy and like prisoners of war by their own country, because they're prisoners of the class war. Sorry about that tangent. I will say this a whole bunch of times.
I think that
was a very
we need another hippie
relevant
movement now. Like we need one now. That's really important.
Also, it's it's kind of a tangent on your tangent, but had any of you all seen Forrest Gump recently?
Yes.
So I didn't see Forrest Gump. I saw Forrest Gump when I was younger. Chad, have you? Have you seen it recently, Chad? Because I know a lot of us saw it when we were younger. I'm 36, so this is when I say younger, that's what I mean. Younger, like, I don't know, 15 years ago, whatever. I haven't watched it recently, but I watched Renegade Cuts. He made a video essay on it. Nice. And, like, I had no idea how much propaganda, like boomer, anti-communist, anti-Black Panther. Like at one point they show Jenny. Jenny is supposed to be like a communist, or not communist. She's supposed to be a hippie, but I think she's coded for a communist because she's like peace and stuff. But she like turns to drugs. She gets HIV, and then she's hangs out the Black Panthers, who's like slapping her in the face and beating her. And then like it's astounding, like so much of this anti-hippie, anti-communist propaganda. I know like a lot of you don't need to hear this, but like just to reiterate to anyone who doesn't know, it's so remarkably been just it's just everywhere, and you don't realize it until you're like, holy shit, this is like my whole childhood has been anti-communism.
I was talking to Sophie about this earlier. I watched yesterday They Live.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure lots of you know. John Carpenter, fantastic director, but They Live is basically, so I think a lot of people took They Live the wrong way. I think a lot of people were like, yeah, it's like a conspiracy and there's like lizard people and aliens like ruling us kind of thing, right? That's, for those of you that don't know, that's the plot of the film. There's aliens who are controlling everyone, but when they say they're controlling everyone, they're actually controlling capitalism, and they're actually sort of, you know, getting people to obey and consume and stay asleep and not question authority and stuff like that. And I was talking to Sophie before, and it hit me yesterday when I was watching it that the only reason that John Carpenter made those antagonists aliens is because he couldn't say that it was capitalism.
Yeah,
he wasn't allowed.
Yeah,
like
you can't.
They would have not got to the studio. They would have not got past the editors or the production studio. All that stuff.
Yeah, 100%. We well, you know that our popular conception of historical revisionism is literally Stalin editing people out of photos.
Right.
You know how in Forrest Gump they edit Forrest Gump into a bunch of photos and footage? It's because it's historical revisionism. They're literally they're like, hey, remember history this way instead. Remember it like this. It's like you're seeing edited footage of history, and you don't. It doesn't occur to you like, I'm seeing edited footage of history. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
Whew, okay, this is a good time to thank people. Kitty Splain, thanks for giving a sub to a frog named Nick. Thank you, Kitty Splain. Popo, thank you for the 5 subs. Thank you, Ash, for another 10 subs. Holy shit. Thank you. Can we get some bun claps in the chat? Or if you're not a sub, bun clap F. If you're if you're a follower but you're not a sub, we also have a scuffed version for you to clap along. There it is. Thanks, Iron. Yeah. Thank you, Dravitz. Let's see here. Boo. Someone, nope. I don't know. Some person just wrote me a wall text about something. Yeah. So someone put the link in the chat. A few of you did. Yeah. Thank you, Ghost. Here's the Forrest Gump link. Renegade Cut. Renegade Cut is like an incredibly cool person. Very like a really, like, he's like a sweetheart. He's a friend of mine. He makes fantastic content. So that's the video that we were talking about. And thank you, chatters, for like writing the titles of the books that Sophie is recommending like in the chat, because I just can't. I'm trying to like put stuff on screen and stuff, and I really appreciate when you all do that, because then, you know, I just can't do it all. So thank you for pitching in. I appreciate it. Thanks for being a community, you know, working together. Look at that. Incredible.
Yeah. I'm just hitting you with too many cool books.
Okay, I am actually just gonna have to leave. I just put some things in our mod chat sort of thing. But thank you all for tuning in for the first stream. It's been amazing. Like, I'm loving the response so far. I think the next kind of part is probably going to be when we start talking about the homework stuff. Is that right? Is that?
Yeah. I mean, we're in the final hour now. 45 minutes to go. So yeah. That's what's coming up.
Yeah. So I gotta go. But thanks everyone for being here. Thanks for hanging out and everything like that. I'm gonna mute my thing and turn my video off. But
maybe if you can leave the window.
Yeah.
If not, it's okay. Like,
and when Tim's back next week, we're going to talk about charity versus mutual aid, the distinction, and why mutual aid matters so much. It's going to be really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So, thanks everyone for hanging out, and I will see you then.
Everyone say bye to Tim. Bye. Everyone's chat say thank you. Making sure chat behaves themselves.
Hey, cool. All right, I'll see you later.
See you later, Tim.
But since we're talking about topics, one thing that we could talk about, or I at least want to note, is that like, I'd say we're open to what people want to learn about, because like we're obviously always learning, and I think it's worth just acknowledging that like if people, I already said, if you're doing something, if you in chat are someone who's doing something incredibly based and you're just like feeding people, or you're like one of the organizing interviews I'm going to do is with Common Humanity Collective, who have made masks and have made air purifiers to help people under the pandemic, right? If you're doing shit like that, like, you know, reach out to us on Twitter. The Twitter for Red Planet is red_planet_TV. Or, you know, all of our Twitters individually. If you, I don't know, have a favorite host you want to contact. But like, you know, we're also open, I think, to like, you know, to what people want to learn about, and if people are particularly keen on stuff. You know, I saw already a suggestion for like a guest for a discussion of Kerala in India. You know, and Kerala in India isn't something that we had on the books yet, but like it's absolutely a topic that we should discuss. So I just want to say that we're open to those suggestions. I think that's important.
Yeah, there's also like great things happening all the time, and this is, you know, another aspect of the show as well. So like if you hear about something, you know, dope, then yeah, we want to hear about that too, I guess. You know what I mean? Like, we're not gonna always like focus on it all the time, but
right.
Like I was like just Googling them because I was thinking of other sort of you know, revolutionary stuff around the world, and there's the Sudanese protests, and you know, there's been a development in that today. The prime minister has resigned.
Oh shit.
Yeah, it's pro-democracy protests are, you know, getting sort of more and more intense and stuff like that. So, you know, there's you can find it. It's out there. It happens. It's just that if you're always tuned into the BBC, you know, the They Live signal tower, you know, that's why
right.
it's important to seize the means of communication.
Yeah,
which is what we're trying to do here, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We're trying to create our own communication here, where we're talking to you about the stuff that really matters and the stuff you care about. So if the stuff you care about, we're not talking about it, like, you know, let us know. But if it's like Hassan's house, I'm sorry for saying the cursed words. I know, I'm just gonna shut down the channel immediately.
I didn't think I'd be laughing that much on this stream, honestly.
Yeah. Should
we give them homework for next time, or should
I want to ask if we have any more comments about like what we're gonna be doing before we get to that, which I think will be the end of the show kind of thing.
So chat, do you have any questions about the show? What the show is gonna be about, stuff like that, before we move on to something else? What we like? Are you gonna talk about this? Are you gonna do that?
Yeah. 100%. Either of you, any thoughts about like, you know, the plan we've laid out? I said this before, like one way you can conceptualize it is if everyone could get into a general strike, that would be dandy. That would be things would be fixed, right? We would have a voice in the conversation of global politics. The people would have that voice. But like not everyone is going to get into a general strike. So like, you know, what do you kind of imagine will be happening in the coming years as people kind of resist?
Fat Gingerbeard says any direct action training in the future, and I think that can be like there's lots of types of direct action. So I mean, there definitely will be.
Yeah.
Right. You know, like we're going to be speaking to organizers, we're going to be speaking to activists, and they're going to be, you know, teaching us all about, you know, stuff like that. But of course, it's a broad subject. So.
Yeah. I mean, I think one thing we'll definitely do, and I'm trying to organize at the moment, is for us to be able to talk about arrest resistance and arrest support training. There are people who organize to be able to like to train people to be able to not get to be able to not get arrested by cops. We're not talking about people who are just like doing insert bad thing that you think is bad and deserves the police punishment, if that's a thing you believe in. But we're not talking about that, but like people who are at a protest, who are trying to protest stuff, and the cops start giving them shit. Like there is training that you can be given about what things you should bring to a protest, how you should behave, what you can do, and if you do get arrested, or if a friend of yours get arrested, what you can do from the inside and what they can do to support you, or rather you could do to support your friend if they are arrested. Like, for example, I know that a lot of cops will just like boot people back out, and like the sensible advice, like if you are trying to not get like caught up in endless nonsense and get like charged with something completely garbage just to run up your like legal fees and disable your ability to protest, like, which is a thing cops do, right? Part of the advice that they give to people is to like not bring your phone and like not bring ID, because one thing that cops will do is they will withhold your ID from you or withhold your phone from you, meaning that you can't just be like, let me go. But then when you do that, cops will often just like they will have taken you to the police station, they'll dump you out on the street, and you won't have eaten, you'll be tired as fuck, you'll be cold, you won't have your money or anything to get home with, and they've done that on purpose, right? And that's where arrest support networks come in. So that's, you know, for an example of an episode that I'm trying to organize to get someone on to talk about that stuff. But like, we won't necessarily be giving that training in the episode. We might go over some of those details, like the ones I just outlined.
Yeah.
But like, the point is highlighting people so that you all, if you're really interested in that kind of stuff, can go to that person who we'd have on, or other people like them in your area or whatever, and receive that training off the show. You know, this is like a space where we can highlight stuff.
Yeah, 100%.
And Gray says it would be nice to hear a bit of history on the labor movement in the 20th century and how workers then got results with a lot of pain and suffering, but what we gain from it and how we can make those changes in the future as a labor movement. I don't know how far back we'll be going. I know that we'll definitely, like we were talking about a number of, we talked about India's recent general strike a number of times. That's history. But I don't know. What did y'all think about, like,
I think there are
I
important
think learning about what we did that
like,
worked is important. So sorry, go ahead.
I think it's always important to learn history of like places where people have tried stuff and it's worked, and to take lessons from that. But it's also important to put things in their historical context. For example, if you just look at people winning strikes in the 20s or something, like there are some examples from specifically around the 20s when organized crime was incredibly involved on both sides of labor disputes. Sometimes organized crime families would involve themselves on the side of a union. Sometimes they would involve themselves on the side of the state and union busters, right? So it's like, so that would be a historical context example of like, that's not the case now, right? And so to look at a struggle where there's this extra force behind it that we're not, and ignore that basically, and pretend like we can apply the lessons from it directly to our own time, would be an example where it would be difficult. But I totally think we should be learning history, and we should be talking about history and historical examples of victories.
I also think it's a really good idea to just reinforce that the direct action, you know, does get the goods. It has in history, and it will, you know, in the coming sort of few years, well, the coming decades, really. Because again, that's all part of hopium, right? It's all part of like, this stuff happens. Like, we wouldn't have the 5-day week if it wasn't, you know, we wouldn't have the weekend if it wasn't for labor movements. We wouldn't have Christmas holidays. We wouldn't have, you know, all this kind of stuff. So, you know, of course, it's really important to look back at that stuff and go, yeah, sweet. I mean, personally, it's like, you know, I think the idea is to sort of encourage people, not just encourage people, but such as predict what's going to happen, like in the future as well, and also, you know, just little bits about what you could do now, you know, because our sort of like conversation is how we can get to where we want to be, because the idea is we don't want to let capitalism hurt as much as it possibly can. So it's great to talk about the past, but it is also about, like, you know, it's progressivism. That's what we're trying to do as leftists. We're trying to, you know, progress things, right?
Also,
I mean, I think that.
Go ahead, please.
Sorry. Okay. You know, I've recommended this already a couple of times. I'll recommend it again. How to Blow Up a Pipeline by Andreas Malm is a book that I think is really, really good. I'm buying it as a Christmas present for all my fellow co-hosts, because I think it's that cool and I want people to check it out. And it's actually full of not just like stuff that has been done, but stuff that you can do. Andreas Malm himself was part of a movement. It's a more cringe side of the book, because there's a little bit of like weird appropriation that they did with the naming of the thing. I won't get into that now, but like the thing that they were doing was basically like sabotaging SUVs in rich neighborhoods, and because they're such massive gas guzzlers. And that might sound like myopic and focused on consumer choice and whatever, but they drove down the amount people were buying SUVs in the whole country of Sweden by 26%, because people didn't want to get SUVs because they didn't want to get their fucking tires slashed. And that's an example of like an action where people were, you know, doing something and it had a direct result in the direction that you want it to go in. You know, you want fewer people to get the SUVs, and you make it inconvenient for SUV owners, and most people don't get SUVs then. Like, it's a measurable thing. And yeah, that's a great, you know, that's a great resource that I recommend to people.
Absolutely. And it only harms capital, right? It only harms capital at the end of the day.
There's a lot of really great questions in the chat. I'm going to read Lizard's question because I don't recall if this is one of the topics that we said we were going to talk about. But Lizard says, would people like resources and ideas for people with kids? Like, I want to protest and I plan on it for the future, but I can't risk getting arrested or find a babysitter. But I really want to get involved in any way I can. Plus, my kids are too young to get vaccinated, so we are pretty much still very quarantined. I don't know. One, I don't know if we're going to have a conversation about like protesting or protest culture. I don't think we talked about this, but I think that perhaps if we haven't, maybe we should talk about it off stream. But I think that might be in when people like it. I think a lot of people think that activism equals physical, like physically leaving your house, physically putting your body in harm's way, physically holding a sign, and then just like being a sitting duck for the cops. And then if enough people do that, then that's gonna solve the problem.
Right.
I don't want to go too off script here because I don't know how.
To be fair, it probably does involve leaving your house. I will say that one. Most direct action probably does involve leaving your house.
Yeah, sure. But I'm guessing protest is like exclusively, it's not like leaving the house and going somewhere. The activity is to exit any building and just stand in a street. I don't think we had this conversation off stream, and maybe we should have that, but I have a lot of, I think it would be good to have at least a brief conversation one of these days about like this protest culture that I find to be pretty concerning and also pretty it's kind of counterproductive and potentially harmful for the point of like keeping people safe. We're not here, Chad, to treat you like sitting ducks and like who cares how many of you go down or something. Like we need to remember that all of our lives have value. The reason I'm a communist is because I think every human life has value. Every life, well, I'm vegan too, but like every like life has value, and I don't think, and it shouldn't be contingent upon like the amount of labor you produce or the amount of money you have or any of the how hot you are or something, or like how much you can bench, like any of these things. Every life has value, and if you are watching right now, you are worthy of love, you're worthy of respect, dignity, a home, food, love. Like these are all things I believe in. That being said, I don't feel comfortable trying to employ that philosophy by like putting people in harm's way. Obviously, this is a violent world. Capitalism is always harming us as we speak. So that's the reality of things. But I think it'd be, at least personally for me, I would like to have a conversation about what is doing stuff and what is maybe not doing stuff.
I think there's a good conversation to be had in there. I think that to answer the direct question about like involving kids and stuff, we've already made this distinction, right, between the legal actions that we do endorse and the things that break the rules, involve more danger, etc., that we aren't endorsing on the show. We are simply reporting on. Exactly. And I would say, as a general rule of thumb, and this isn't always the case, but as a general rule of thumb, the former, the civil disobedience, this going to protests and so on, there's often kids at protests, and including like not just marches that are bigger, and a concern expressed in chat was like to do with vaccinations, right? But also like smaller protests. Like I've been involved in a protest that was outside the offices of a housing organization who were treating their like tenants like complete shit. Like there was mold all over the walls. There was like the ceiling was fucking raining from leaking pipes, shit like this. None of the lights worked.
Sounds
this
like my
woman
place.
this woman who had like a stroke and has 2 kids. She was struggling in this horrible place, and the housing association, which is supposed to be like a non-profit to benefit the tenants, was like treating her like shit and completely ignoring the situation, right? And and that's just one story of a ton for that housing association. And I was involved in a protest which was very few people, but we were there and we were drawing attention to what fucking scumbags they were, right? And it helped to get demands met, even though it was like a dozen of us just outside with a megaphone, handing a letter, and there were kids there. There were kids there who were like being adorable with their signs, who would come with their mom or something, to be at the protest and just take part in it. And I would say, again, just rule of thumb, not totally true, but rule of thumb, like protests can usually be a pretty safe place for kids. unless it's like a protest that you suspect is gonna kick off, or like have fascist counter-protesters show up, or shit like this. But like generally speaking, you know, there are a ton of stuff within civil disobedience and legal resistances that like are completely kid-friendly. But then also there's a lot that isn't kid-friendly, but that's just makes sense because there wouldn't be, you know.
And when we're talking about things like mutual aid networks, like those things tend to be incredibly kid-friendly. Like volunteering in your immediate community is, you know, and again, we are not endorsing anything violent. We're endorsing, you know, those kinds of things that are completely safe to do, but actually, you know, aid, you know, and speed up the end of capitalism, essentially. And I don't know if you want to touch upon this at all, Soph, because this is totally all you. But one of the most awesome things that Soph has ever said to me is about building leftist culture. And I think you can apply this to that question, because in the same way that we, your hosts here, are sort of, you know, trying to seize the means of communication. That's a very like, and I'm not just saying this to make me feel like I'm doing something, or my co-hosts, but we are effectively, there is a need for this. There is a need for this. We have to do our best to try and, you know, have a broadcast for the people by the people, right? So in the same way that we're doing that, there are also many other different avenues, and it could be as something as simple as like making leftist art. Do you know what I mean? Or like making leftist music, or you know, shit like that. You know what I mean? Like
here in the UK, like the Socialist Workers' Party, who have a ton of shit wrong with them, don't trust parties, especially ones that have a bunch of gammon in them. But they make, like, mass manufacture tons of signs, which they have stalls that they just hand out tons of signs at protests. So again, revisiting protests, but I want to add on something to protests in a second. You know, if you wanted your kids to be involved in something, and contribute, and, you know, like really add something to something, a fun creative thing that kids will be super into is making a ton of a ton of signs that you give out to random strangers. Like if you wanted to involve kids in a protest in a way, and more on an organizing side, exactly like what Mule's saying, there's a practical example of something that's more like you at home could get a bunch of like craft supplies, and you and your kids could just have fun making the same sign over and over again, or loads of different signs. If, you know, kids are creative, they love to come up with shit. Like, you know, and then just give them out to strangers for free to help with the protest. You know, that's a thing that you can do. That's a cool thing. And then there's a bunch of other stuff that is, you know, more directly helping people, exactly like Mule was saying. But the broader thing here, I think, is like what Nicole was saying about like about the problem with protest culture and people thinking that they're doing stuff going to protests. It relates back to that Kwame Ture quote where the OG, the late great, said, you know, there's a difference that we need to understand between mobilizing and organizing, right? Martin Luther King was a great mobilizer. Malcolm X was a great organizer. To be a great organizer, you have to be a good mobilizer, but if you're a mobilizer, you're not necessarily an organizer. Right. Ture said, wherever Malcolm X went, he left a mosque, right? He would build community. He would build fucking buildings that were the community centers, that were like people were coming there and getting together in a community and working together, right? And by contrast, Martin Luther King didn't really actually do the same thing. And that's I think it plays into what Nicole was saying. Like, you know, people thinking that they're doing loads by going and attending big marches and stuff. It isn't actually the most of what helps people. Right. And in the coming weeks, we will talk about various examples of legal, safe, civil disobedience that would be kid-friendly. I'm sure. I'm absolutely positive they will show up. But violence has come up a bunch in this discussion, and someone said in chat something that I thought would be a good place to go next for the discussion, which was, is it against Twitch terms of service to talk about revolutionary working class militias? Yes. Next question. No, I'm kidding. In all seriousness, you know, once again, we are not endorsing anything illegal at all, and certainly not endorsing violence. And it is important to understand that as you build systems of mutual aid that support people, both the capitalist state and awful brainworms fascists will bring violence to you. And so there is absolutely a conversation about self-defense and community defense and protecting yourselves. But the thing is, it's not necessarily a conversation about violence. Not right away, anyway. If you are to have those are conversations that you want to have with the people you are practically organizing with in a serious and practical sense, not one that you want to have with some Twitch streamers, if you get me. But even then, there's plenty of like stuff in, you know, if you did want to learn about that stuff, those resources exist, just out there. But one thing to understand is that tactically speaking, not being the victim of violence, right? There is a thing called, Nicole, maybe you could get this up. It's called, I think, the survivability onion. I think that's the name of it. And so basically this is a diagram which is about how to survive in the case where there is an armed opponent, right? And it's because there are layers to it, right? And only the smallest part of the onion is going to be like, don't die if you're shot. The next one up from that is going to be, don't get shot, right? But like actually the outermost one is like, I can't remember if it's like, don't be seen, right? Or maybe even like, don't be there. Yeah, there are a few different versions, but like the thing is that the biggest and most important layer of that is actually going to always, in the same case for the there's an armed opponent thing, right? We can use this metaphor to understand how people need to think about the violence that will come after them for trying to just feed homeless people.
Mm-hmm.
The most important step, the most important first one is actually going to be, don't be seen, rather than you know, learn how to fight a cop or something. Like, you know, there are lots of really important conversations to have there. The first and most fundamental thing is that they are actually conversations about self-defense, not about fighting to do a violent like push towards the thing. That doesn't actually serve our goals. The thing is, fascists' main aggrievement is that they do not control the state monopoly on violence. That's why they cry and shit and piss and cum whenever police don't agree with them. It's an observable thing, okay? Like, MAGA fascists will freak the fuck out if police aren't on their side with something that they're doing.
And in the UK as well.
Totally, yeah.
Whereas we expect it.
Yeah.
That's our expectation.
But like, the state monopoly on violence agreeing with fascists, that's their main aggrievement. And so fascists' ultimate goal is to control the monopoly on violence. That's why so many fascists deliberately involve themselves in the army and the police and so on, right? Communists' end goal isn't to control the monopoly on violence. So it's just not a conversation that we should be having framed in those terms. If that makes sense to people, like, it's actually just not our goal. In the same way that if I were talking about TERFs on Twitter, right? TERFs want trans people to not exist. On Twitter, they want trans people to not post, right? And so that's why TERFs organize in mass reporting campaigns to try and get trans people's accounts banned and shut down. We don't do the same to them, not because we're not organized. Okay, we're not. But because our goal isn't for TERFs to not exist, except the same people should exist. They just shouldn't be bigots. You know, we want to just live our lives and be left alone. We're not actually, our end goal isn't an aggressive one in that way. So I hope that analogy makes sense, and I hope that all made sense to people.
And I don't know if we moved on from this. Sorry, go on, Nicole.
I was going to say, what you're saying reminds me so much of Angela Davis, this video, Angela Davis on Violence and Revolution. It's super short. You can even watch it on stream right now if you want, but I'd rather continue the conversation. This video is awesome. Angela Davis kind of just talks about what you're talking about, which is like this idea that Black people are being like attacked, and so they decide one day to take up arms and just like try to just patrol their neighborhood to like keep themselves and their family and friends safe, because people are just being murdered and blown up, and there's like it's just horrible. And how someone would be like, why do you choose violence? You know, this insistence on reframing the conversation to be like, if you are trying to fight, if you're trying to just defend yourself from violence, which will necessarily lead to you trying to, I don't know, barricade yourself. And if they get through a barricade, then what? If you resist dying, that is somehow violence. This reframing is really harmful, I think. And it completely doesn't make any sense.
There's a philosophical root to that which Fanon explores, right, where black skin in just existing in white society does violence to white people who don't consider black people to be an acceptable type of human being to be. So when a black person exists and just is a human being, white people feel like there's a violence being done to them, and that's when the their systemic violence is like they see it as this like back and forth, exactly the same thing.
And it's interesting as well that, like, because you said there was a few people talking about violence, right, in the chat.
Right.
And it's interesting that is like, you know, on this first stream where we've sat down and we've explained to you many like non-violent ways that you can benefit society, that it is instilled in us. And I'm not going to go at your chat because this is just capitalist brainwashing.
Right.
They make you think the only way out of this is violence, which immediately makes you think, nah, sorry, not doing it. And it's not the case.
Can I interject one thing? It's a real quick thing, but it's something I've been thinking a lot recently, is how much defenders of the status quo will insist that instability of the state will primarily harm minorities. And fascists will rise up and they will come after minorities, but this is the thing you are told to disincentivize you from wanting to change anything, because it's literally an abuse tactic where defenders of the status quo are saying, if you try and make anything better, I will make it way worse for you because you tried to improve things. Carry on, Mule. You're on the money.
Well, that's it really. At the end of the day, like we're told that, like, you know, the only way to do things, and it goes back to that inaccessibility of theory, that inaccessibility of politics as well, that it's like, you know, the only thing that you can do is vote. That's all you can do. And if it doesn't work out that way, sorry, bro, you're fucked, right? You know, so in terms of like people saying like, oh, but what about violence? What about violence? It's like, no. They want you to think that you have to be violent. They want to drag you down to their level, because that's all capitalism and fascism understands is violence. You know, capitalism has a monopoly not just on violence, you know, physical violence, but you know, financial violence, and it's their language, and you're speaking in their language when you know, when we talk about violence. So
well, when we talk about violence, I guess that's the thing, is it making a distinction between violence and self-defense. Actually, Nat put a quote here from, I'm sorry to be absolutely like sucking Andreas Malm's toes the whole stream, but it's a good fucking book. It rocks. Everyone should get it, right? But Nat put a quote in here that's really good from the book, okay? Or a paraphrase anyway, right? Most pacifists will say violence for self-defense is acceptable, but that's just like most other people. It's about understanding what self-defense actually means, where violence is actually coming from, and what actions are actually strategic and effective. So like, maybe throw out like the notion of pacifism for a moment and consider instead a distinction between violence and self-defense, right? It's like if your violence, if your willingness to be violent only exists in the capacity that you know other people are going to be violent to you and you want to be safe, right? That's self-defense. If your violence is because you hate a thing and you're trying to destroy it, right? That is this violence. And like, I think that's why we got to say, like, we don't endorse violence. That's why, you know, and that's again a big theme of How to Blow Up a Pipeline, is that the machinery of state that is and corporations and business as usual that is doing climate change, like directly pumping shit into the air and breaking up the ice and all of this shit, is killing us, is killing the planet. And like, the position of the book is you know, it is actually self-defense to sabotage that equipment, because otherwise it will kill us all. Like, and that I think is a very, very valid perspective on it.
Incredibly poignant. Yeah, I agree.
But yeah.
Especially when it's something like destroying equipment as being framed as violence. It's an interesting one as well. Like, it's violence when you break a piece of metal that has no feeling because it affects the bottom line of a corporation.
Near the end of the book, he talks about an action that they did where they got into an oil plant, and the only thing that they damaged was the fences on the way in. But because they hadn't made like any kind of group consensus about what kind of action they really wanted to take. They didn't like sabotage the plant or anything. Because like they just hadn't decided beforehand. So they weren't all going in prepared to be arrested for sabotaging an oil plant, which would be a pretty serious thing to commit to. But because of that, all they damaged was the fence. Nonetheless, like the CEO of the oil company, loads of the national press, and loads of conservatives were like, this disgusting violence that these climate activists are taking part in. Look at this horrific damage, this destructive violence that these climate activists are taking part in. And it's like, it'll be framed that way. It just will be framed that way. But actually, there's this self-defense thing we need to understand.
Someone's asking what book you're talking about. Could you please tell us which book?
One more time. It's How to Blow Up a Pipeline by Andreas Malm. It's very good. I'm buying it for all my lovely co-hosts for Christmas because it's so good. I want them to read it. I encourage everybody else to read it too. I will, speaking of what's going to be going on in the weeks to come, I will definitely be doing loads of book recommendations throughout. That's definitely part of what I'm here for. Yeah. For those who can read.
Yeah, books is hard for me. I will say, definitely ADHD, and I do find it quite hard. But this book, particularly, Sophie, you were right about this. Very big text, not too many big words, apart from gigaton that I didn't know was 1 billion tons. But yeah, pretty easy to digest.
I'll say this one: the guy likes to use big words in a specific way where it feels very show-offy, but it's also in a way where if you just don't know it, you can take a break, just Google that one word, and the rest of the sentence won't be ruined. Here's a freebie for everyone: prima facie means on first appearance. It means first face, and this dude loves that Latin phrase, which is a bit wanky of him. He's a bit wanky in a few ways. Doesn't matter. It's still a really good book. Get the book. It rocks. Yeah.
Right. So did we even speak about homework? We've just been
no, because we didn't want to get to it yet. We want to answer people's questions. There was a lot of other questions, but fine. I think that I'm going to sum up a lot of the questions I saw with try to sum it up in one kind of I saw people asking like, what can I do? What can we do every day? I saw people asking about like, how do I help my friend who's in this situation or that situation? So I think that what people are looking for, if I could try to like address all those at once, because I would love to address each and every one, but we just don't have time. And also I want to be a little more. Yeah, we'll be here every Sunday. So chat, write it down. I want to see everyone taking notes right now. Peppo G, write it down. Every Sunday, 2 p.m. Pacific to 5 p.m. Pacific on this channel. Yeah, write it down, chat. Every Sunday. And this is the one time we're not going to have guests. Every Sunday from here on out, we should, unless we have, reason not to, whatever.
Yeah.
We should have a guest or guests. And we're going to be discussing these issues with them. And like, hopefully we're going to have people on that are knowledgeable or I guess they're all knowledgeable. But like sometimes people that will also have like actual like IRL experience doing the things. So we could, you can ask these questions like directly to them. But yeah, that's the plan. So let's say that if you're interested in like, what can I do? What can I get involved in? I'll reiterate something that Sophie was saying earlier. We're not gonna deal with this today because this is just our very first show, and I hope you all enjoyed yourself today. But don't get overwhelmed thinking about all the things, all the world, all of the problems, everything, because it's hard not to. And honestly, I kind of feel like the timeline is a little bit of an op in that way, and that it's like always showing you all of the horrors, and after a while you're just like, you're just like, okay, well it's just awful. That's it. There's nothing that can be done. Don't worry if you're interested in getting involved. The one thing that I'll tell you that I'm sure Mule and Sophie will agree with me is find a thing, and make that more of your focus and get started there. But how do you get started? What do we do? Well, these are things we're going to be talking about.
Right.
So we'll be talking about civil disobedience, and then we'll be describing, what is other things that have happened out there.
Right. and tune in every week. And if you okay, next week we're going to talk about charity versus mutual aid with some more practical examples. But then we'll go on, and I don't remember the exact order right now, but we will talk about housing. I'm sure we will talk about prisons. I'm sure we will we will talk about climate resistance. Okay, these are topics we will cover. And let's say, for sake of argument, let's assume, for sake of argument, you tune in, housing, and we're like, these are the things you can do to help people in your community. But you're like, you're like, I'm already in a tenants union. I do what I can when I can, but that's not the thing I actually want to dedicate my time to, right? And then we're like, okay, prisons, and you're like, prisons, like, I care that people are in prison, and I care about abolishing prison, but it just isn't this thing that calls to me. And then another week we're like, climate, and you're like, and then you're like, oh shit, I really care about that. Like, I really care about protecting nature, and I would love to do that kind of action, right? That's what we're saying. You tune in every week, and we're going to cover different topics, and guaranteed something is going to make you go, oh shit, I should do that. Probably, honestly, several things are gonna make that happen for you. And we're also going to talk about, because I know a lot of people will also be thinking, as has been said in the chat, and people have said, like, they don't have the time, that they got to work, whatever. Like, how will they have the how can they be doing that stuff? We are living through a time of things crumbling and collapsing around us, right? Like, a lot of people are finding themselves out of work, and a lot of people will find themselves out of work increasingly as things fucking fall apart. And I know that's not the hopium answer, like I've been trying to give people, like, uplifting things, but like the fact is, for a lot of people, they're going to get pushed. And if you jump before you're pushed, or you're ready to get pushed, or you hold on to your job, but you just, like, fucking slack it as much as possible. You take as many sickies as you can, and you use that time to go and do cool stuff. And then eventually, and you know that they're going to make you redundant at some point, but you're just, like, using your time in a way that you care about instead in the meantime, right? It's about organizing, knowing that worse shit is coming, right? Because it is coming. And, like, so I would basically turn the thing around, right? And say, like, you're worried, like, you want to do something, but you got to work. I would say, like, you don't know that capitalism is going to carry on providing for you in that way. In fact, it's quite likely it's going to stop. Like, it's getting fucking worse all the time in that regard. Yeah. So if you put your energies into finding ways that you can be provided for outside of that, and other people can be provided for outside of that too, right? You'll be ready when that shit comes. Yeah. And that's you got to reframe it in your mind. You got to think of what you know is coming and get ready for it. Yeah. Right? And saying, like, I got to work, so blah blah blah, isn't necessarily being ready for it. There are other people, by the way, and I just want to highlight this for a second. There are definitely people who are comfortable, are going to keep their job and have, like, fairly well paying jobs and so on. And I know a lot of people like that who are lefties who get the money from that and they put it right into loads of leftist projects. That's based as hell and awesome. Like, I'm not, I'm not telling absolutely everyone right this moment to quit their jobs. And in specific, there are people who are genuinely, like, helping out a load of shit with their position that they're in, and that's cool too.
And also, Pinkland says you can also microdose communism by shitting on the clock.
That's right.
That's true. That's
a good.
It is
very
a thing you got to think
accessible
of.
For people.
Tiny
Save
little
your poops
things
for the job on the clock. Unless you work in Amazon warehouse, then maybe
like,
they won't let you do that.
I don't think it's been a thing in the States, but in the UK, during the pandemic, we had this huge working from home thing. Like, everyone just, like, who works in an office was like, nope, you're gonna work from home. I'm pretty sure it happened in the States. There's a lot of people I know from the States who do that now. But it's so, like, interesting that they are desperate for everybody to go back into the office where they can be, like, looked at and watched all the time. Yeah. Because during the pandemic, there was a really big thing that happened.
The pandemic's still fucking going on.
And
they're still trying to force people back to work.
This is it.
Right.
And there's so much that people did during that working from home sort of, like, period, that is basically resulted in things like people getting involved in like Black Lives Matter. That was a whole thing during it. You know, it's like at the very start of like working from home, people were like, yeah, sweet. And that was like a global fucking, I mean, I'm talking about the George Floyd protest specifically.
Yeah.
You know, it was a worldwide phenomenon. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a phenomenon. Again, it's inevitable. And they don't want you to work from home. They don't want you to use your company time to get involved in, you know, direct action, mutual aid stuff. That's why they want you to go back to the office. And
yeah, legit,
you know,
100%. They really, really do. People are actively asking for the homework now in chat. So let's now we've withheld it, and now they're begging for the homework. It's great, we did it. We tricked them, and now they're super into the homework. So folks, let's do it like this again. I want a 1 in chat for anyone who is in any kind of union whatsoever. Now, let me just clarify before you hit the key. If you're unsure, a 1 could apply to being you're in the McDonald's union. It's specifically for McDonald's. It could be a trade union that applies to your whole industry, and it's for the fast food workers union. It could be not a work union, but a tenants union or a disability union or even an unemployment union. I want to see how many people are in, and 0 if you are not. I want you to also participate. I want to see 1s if you're in any kind of union, 0 if you are in no kind of union. Please, in chat, go.
And I will
so
say...
I already counted. There's about 20, 23, 24, 25, 26.
And no, the chatter union doesn't count.
Chatter
is
that's
made
right,
a union to unionize against me.
Oh no.
Yeah, they have a badge
so I'm not
and everything.
Counting,
all right.
I'm not counting 0s, but there's about 30 1s.
You're union rep.
Good job to those people, but we're looking at the 0s at the moment. Okay, so the homework still applies to everyone, and I'll explain that in a second. But hey, my 0s, I want you to come back next week. I am desperate to see you. I really want you here next week. I want you to come back, and you know what I want you to do next week is press 1, because in this week, when you go away, you are going to join a union. Any kind of union, because as we've discussed today, if there was a massive general strike, right, that would do it. Like the biggest possible general strike, that would do it. And everything is devolved from there. So being involved in any kind of organizing is going to be a massive difference for you. So join any kind of union. Let's refresh that again. It could be the specific union to like where you work, if you work for some big chain. It could be an industry union that applies to all workers of your type. It could be a non-workers union, such as renters/tenants unions. It could be a disability or unemployment union. Now, my 1s, my beautiful 1s, who are already in some kind of union, good for you. You're going to join another one. Because here's the thing. The majority of you will be in some kind of workers union and not in a tenants union or a disability union. There are organizations that you can be a part of to help other people, right? Tenants unions, you can absolutely own a house and be in a tenants union because they need bodies on the ground for eviction resistance and shit like this, right? Yeah. You can absolutely be supportive in a disability union while not being disabled currently yourself. That wasn't a threat. That was just most people get old, you know? And you can be supportive without, like, you know, speaking over people. You can still support people that way. That's the point of mutual aid. So join another kind of organization or union, right? And the special privilege that the 1s get is they get to press 2 if they do that next time. Okay? So
think about that, chat.
Okay, so I want every 0 to come back and press a 1 because they've joined a union. I want every 1 to come back and press a 2 because they joined another one. Jordan DH in chat says, I'm already a 2. And I'll just say this for the record. I did say homework was for everybody, but if you're already a 2, good job. Just good job.
Yeah,
that's great.
That's great.
Someone is asking, like, how do you... We should direct them to let them know how to find unions as well.
Yes, let's talk about that in 1 second. Optional homework for 2s is to get someone around you into a union. That's your optional homework, and you can really gloat and show off if you want. But next week when we come back, we're going to do that check again. And I don't want to see 0s unless they're a new chatter. Okay, I want to see every 0 I saw today come back as a 1, and
But
ones come back as twos. Fuck yeah, let's do it.
We could click on your name and see if you're a new chatter though. So
yeah,
you know,
there is
so
that.
We know that.
Yeah.
We know that shit. And like, I guess as well, maybe it goes without saying that like, if you want to be a super nerd and do the stuff that the ones and the twos are doing, as well as the zeros, yeah, do that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
But like, you don't have to. So you know, like, it's up to you. But that would be a super nerd cool thing to do.
Yeah, I would be super into it if people did that. Okay, how to find... Oh my goodness, Extremely Online Left just posted an amazing message in chat. I was about to answer this. How to find unions. Join your local militant syndicalist union today. Come on. But no, the IWW, the International Workers of the World, or Industrial Workers of the World, I can't remember which one it is now, but they do have lists of unions. There are central organizations that help to organize, and a bunch of those links that you can click there will help you to find various kinds of unions around. But those will be work-based ones. So if you're looking for a tenants one, or a disability or unemployment union, or any other kind of like organizing together to use collective action in a union-like structure, right? All I can really say is Google it. But hey, Google is a good tool, and it is, you know, it will help you if you know what you're looking for. Tips someone in a small non-unionized software company. So this is what I was talking about when I said industry unions, okay? There will be unions for your type of worker. It doesn't matter about your company itself being union, like the workers in that specific company unionizing necessarily, unless it's a really big company. You can join, I'm sure there is some form of software developers union that you could look into joining. But if there isn't, and you'd like to start one, and this is the really cool, this is okay, you know what? This is the 3. No, but this is the really cool thing. The IWW has resources and will actually communicate with you and like spend time and resources in helping you if you want to start your own union. If you go away and you're like, I desperately want to do this homework because I'm a real teacher's pet and I really want to impress Sophie, you can't find that there's any kind of union that applies to the work that you do, contact the IWW. They will help you to start one, which is really fucking cool. Yeah. Sorry, Mule. No,
I was just gonna say that, like, so I'm seeing a lot of people in the chat say like, oh, Living, Rent, or ACOM in the UK. Like, I'm sure they're great unions to join as well. But like, just try. And because I Googled Manchester Renters Union, that's the city that I live in. I had no idea that there was a renters union in my city. So you might have one that is more community based.
Yeah,
which is
100%
based, right?
Yeah, and that's things you can weigh up, but you can also just like be a member of both if you want. Like, so
exactly
a good example there. So Acorn is the name of the UK tenants union that is like all across the country, and so there are local ones like London Renters Union that I've done some work with, and like you were just saying, Manchester Renters Union or Tenants Union, and they will be more local and community focused. But the thing is, then Acorn is bigger and has you know some bigger thing. There are pros and cons, you know.
Yeah,
and it doesn't hurt to just like join both Facebook pages or whatever. But like you know, but to be clear, in terms of the homework, I'm talking about joining as in joining. So like, find something and join it properly, not just like follow the account, but join. Like, pay a membership if you can. Most unions actually have a thing where if you can't afford to pay, you just don't have to pay. So don't worry about the payment, but like become a member officially. That's what we need.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's the homework.
Cool, Chad, you got it? Remember, join a union. If you are part of a union already, then join another union. Got it?
If you're already part of 2,
then
get someone else in 1.
Then get someone else in 1.
Optional.
Yeah, that's extra credit if you want to be a real teacher's pet.
Extra, yeah, exactly.
And unemployed people, there are unemployment unions, which is an extremely genius idea, by the way. Because unemployed people are like
really
already striking, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. It's something I want to get on organizing interviews, because I think it's central to this idea that like, if we're striking just for the sake of striking, we're just exiting from capitalism, and that would fucking rock, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
all right.
I want to just quickly say, like, I think that a lot of people who are dying for like serious action that's going to change stuff think of joining a union as a bit of a timid step. It's week 1. There will be more based homeworks, I promise. Yeah. But But on the other hand, I also know a lot of people who think of joining a union as a timid kind of liberal end kind of step that won't help and isn't enough, but haven't done it. So if anyone in the chat is here
Isn't that convenient?
thinking that that's not enough, and they haven't actually joined a union, I would ask you to reflect. And if you have joined a union and you still feel that way, great. I agree with you. There's going to be more homework.
Yeah.
So, look forward to that.
Yeah.
Yep. Cool. All right. Chat, what'd you think? Remember, let's normally at the end of every stream, I do a rate today's stream from 1 to 5 thing. So I'll do it for this stream. Rate today's stream from 1 to 5. 1 being the worst stream you've ever seen in your life. 5 being the best stream you've ever seen in your life. If you don't give me a 5, you tell me why. 6? Oh,
you got a 6?
That's
pretty
5.
10 there as
See,
well.
if they don't give you a 5, they have to explain themselves. It's already what?
Yeah, people
Look
love
how
this shit.
happy they are.
Let's fucking go.
500. My goodness.
Oh my god.
Wow, thank you, chatters. What a bunch of sweet chatters. Well, I had a really great time.
Yeah.
Hannah died, I swear to God. I had a really great time. Yeah, so chat, this video, the stream will be available on my channel and VODs. I'll probably make a playlist. I'll probably try to do that so it's like always there. But it'll also be on my YouTube. So exclamation YouTube. It's Bad Bunny official clips. I will probably be rebranding in the next coming weeks, maybe. So I'll keep y'all posted on that. But make sure you follow our Twitter, which is Red Planet. It's twitter.com/Planet_TV. Yeah. Red_Planet_TV.
That's the one.
And
and next week. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. And so and also make sure that
really appreciate
you follow all of us on Twitter as well. So my Twitter is Bad Bunny Twitch. Exclamation Twitter if you want that Twitter. Sophie, what's your Twitter?
It's Sophie_FRM_Mars because I'm Sophie from Mars. And if you're looking for me on any platform, that's the name, not necessarily like that, but it's Sophie from Mars.
And you can contact us about the show if you want, if there's guests you want us to have on, if there's topics you think we should talk about. We won't be able to get to all the questions, all the comments, but I do want y'all to feel free. This is my personal opinion. I don't know about the rest of you. I want y'all to feel free to reach out to us so we can, because this is not like this isn't supposed to be some like, celebrity thing. This is like, we're actually like working together. It's just that we happen to be the faces of this particular show. And
it's no secret that I'm a big fan of Robert Evans. It's no secret that this show takes inspiration from It Could Happen Here. And one of the coolest things they've done is they talked about school boards and the struggle going on against QAnon freaks in school boards right now.
Right.
In the following week, they had a guy on who was in a school board and was engaged in that kind of struggle against the QAnon freaks and talked to an audience member about that stuff. That's incredibly cool, and I'd love to do shit like that. So genuinely, like, if we talk about something and then you go get involved and you want to talk about your experience, or if you've already been involved in something for a long time and want to talk about your experience, I'd fucking love to hear from you. Seriously.
Also, DJ Mule. I mean, some people already posted your Twitter, but if you could put
yes, you can find my Twitter in the chat. It's DJ Mule, exactly as it's spelled, underneath my head, but with an underscore afterwards.
Yeah.
So DJ Mule _. Awesome. Swift Arrow, thank you for the resub for 3 months. I really appreciate it. And one last thing, Rinky Ding says that they will love a schedule. So like
we haven't shorted up yet. We've only got a few weeks,
and that goes for guests as well. Someone else asked about like when will we announce guests? So that's
and
a great
Tim's
question.
Twitter as well. Tim's Twitter is in the chat.
Yeah.
Oh,
Tim is Dread Conquest on Twitter. Yeah. We don't have the schedule short up right this second. We have a few things loosely planned. We don't have the guests sorted. We will post it on our Twitter again, red_planet_TV when it's ready. So just watch out there, and we'll let you know.
Well, next week is definitely charity versus mutual aid.
Yes, the one we know and we can say for sure is next week we are talking about charity versus mutual aid. What's the distinction? Why do you want to build mutual aid? Why is charity serving the capitalist system? It's something that people, don't necessarily like to think of charity as, because they like to think charity is good. But we're exposing the truth. we're gonna cancel charity.
Yeah, get ready for charity to be cancelled.
Yeah, but we're gonna talk about mutual aid versus charity next week, same time, Same channel. It's gonna be fucking awesome.
Also, Hairley said they just emailed a local IWW rep, so congrats. That's cool.
Nice.
Someone's
nice
doing their homework already.
yeah.
That's
I know.
fantastic.
What a
Look at
kiss
this.
ass.
Holy
What a
shit.
teacher's pet.
What a dork.
Someone shove him in a locker.
It's
right.
the swirly for you.
And the locker is called Communism.
Right. And the swirly is actually just like, it's a really nice shower. I don't know. It's not.
Feel really good after. I don't know if you have any of you have any suggestions for raids. I was just gonna raid Nicotine, one of my favorite people. She's a
no one I follow is online now anyway.
She's a lefty trans streamer who is like a very good friend of mine and does a lot of like really fun RP. She's not like a political streamer, but she does some politics, but mainly like gaming and RP, and just generally speaking a pretty base person. So I was thinking about just raiding her if that's okay, unless you have another suggestion.
There's no one.
It feels like nobody's
who I follow
streaming lately.
Wise. Yeah, no one's streaming right now.
It's the holidays or something.
Probably, yeah. Probably.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and then B-Rat just made a reading list. Climate Leviathan.
It's the books I've been recommending.
Right,
Leviathan
people
by Joel Wainwright and Geoff Mann, Capitalist Realism by Mark Fisher, How to Blow Up a Pipeline by Andreas Malm, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa by Walter Rodney, The Shock Doctrine by Naomi Klein. And I would add to that list literally anything by David Graeber.
I was going to say you were gonna mention David Graeber.
You know I'm a Graeber simp.
I know, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
You know it's gotta happen.
You mean a shrimp?
I will
remember.
I will shout out one more if people are just dying for book recommends. The Autonomous City: A History of Urban Squatting by Alexander Vasudevan is a fantastic book. I know the text isn't really showing up great there, but it's The Autonomous City: A History of Urban Squatting by Alexander Vasudevan. We will be doing an episode about squatting. It will be largely based on this book. It's an awesome book. Squatting is a really important thing that we all need to be thinking about. Okay.
All right. Chloe says Sophie from Graeber. Classic.
Got him.
All right, chat.
See you all next week.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for watching. Say hi to Nicotine. Be nice to Nicotine. And I will see you all tomorrow on my stream. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific. For me to just hang out with y'all and talk politics. And yeah, make sure you follow us all on Twitter. Bye, everyone.
Peace.